you. Thank you very much, everyone. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to everybody that's joined us this evening, members of the public who are in the room, also watching on YouTube, as well as members of the committee, everybody that's going to be contributing this evening, and our officer team as well. Before this evening's planning committee gets started, I'd like to invite the committee clerk, Susan Ledane, to explain how proceedings will work tonight and to undertake a roll call of those that are attending remotely.
If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. When the public participants are invited to speak, their microphones will be made live by the committee officer. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room, and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. Are there any questions before we start the meeting? Okay, I will now hand back to the chair.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Susan. So item number 1 is apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Louise Peace. Is there a substitute for Louise this evening?
I don't believe there is, or unless John Claydon here? No.
No.
I don't think subs were available. I'm really sorry.
Okay, cool. No worries. Thank you very much. And do we have any other apologies? No, I'm seeing none. Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, and item number 2 is minutes of the meeting of the 13th of June 2024. I propose that we take these as read and approve the minutes of our meeting held on the 13th of June as a true record of proceedings. Could I have a seconder, please? Yes. Councillor, no, it's not one of you. Go on then, I'll take Reese.
I just wanted to ask a brief question. I think our committee clerk did an amazing job, given how long the meeting was, in summarising everything. But I did just a minor point on page 17, the bullet points in the middle. The second one doesn't really make sense. I think there should be a that in there somewhere. Merits of the solar farm were discussed with views of the farms themselves to be located in the correct places. It doesn't really make sense. So I think it should be with views that the farm, anyway, just very minor point. Didn't really make sense, that sentence. I think it's just a typo.
Yeah, no,
that's all. I'm not making a big point. It's a minor amendment, but it doesn't make sense.
No,
Otherwise, I'm happy to second. Thank you.
No, that's fine. Right. So I've got meetings that have been proposed and seconded. Any additional comments on the meetings from the 13th? No, I'm seeing nobody indicate. Could we then move to a vote, please, Susan?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Excellent. So item number 3 is notification of any other business. I have had none. So item number 4 is chair's announcements. Number 1. In accordance with council policy, this meeting is being recorded. The recording will be available both on the council's YouTube channel as well as on the council's ModGov site, alongside the documents from this evening's meeting. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under the chair's announcements on the agenda. Item number 3, to clarify matters for registered speakers, members of the public in groups of supporters or objectors, each of you have 3 minutes per person. And where there's only one public speaker or objector, then that member of the public will have up to 5 minutes. So if we've got a number of you that are speaking to object against one of the applications, you get 3 minutes each. If there's only one person that's objecting, you get the whole 5 minutes. And obviously for the applicant as well, if there's multiple supporters, they each have 3 minutes. And if there's only one supporter, they will have 5 minutes. Applicants, member advocates, I will come on to you shortly. And there are separate groups who are registered as member advocates. A member advocate is a councillor who is representing residents on a particular application. Those members will receive 5 minutes in total to speak. I think we've only got single councillors wishing to speak, so the councillors will have the whole 5 minutes to themselves. And also the applicant will get 5 minutes to speak on their applications. All speakers will be given a warning at roughly 1 minute remaining. I will try not to interrupt or put you off, which means that it might be a case that I give you a 30-second warning, because the last thing I want to do is disrupt you when you're making a really valid point. I'll wait for you to take a breath where possible. After you've spoken, all speakers will receive are likely to be asked questions by the members of the panel. So it'll be points of clarification. Please try and avoid making speeches when you're answering questions or providing clarification for us. If things are leaning into the speech, then I might give you a bit of a Paddington stare or a stern look, and then politely and respectfully have to cut you off. And at the end, obviously, at the end of it all, the members of the committee will then move forward and debate everything that we've heard on the particular application. Just as a general point to note as well, the planning committee is not a party political space. The members of the committee make their decisions based on the evidence that is presented this evening and on their own conscience as well. There should be no whipping. If there is, that would be a matter for the Code of Conduct to examine. And I would take a particularly dim view of any party politics entering the space. And again, if there is a whiff of that, members will be told appropriately. So, number 4, section 4.8.23a. For the purposes of clarification, in order to vote on an agenda item at this meeting, a member must be present for the entirety of the debate and consideration for that item. If a member leaves the room at any point of the item, they will not be able to vote. I will, of course, make sure that we have breaks where we need breaks. And if any member of the committee needs a break during consideration of a substantive item, let me know, and we will hold the proceedings, because the last thing I want is for anybody to be prevented from voting, especially given some of the issues that we're going to be determining this evening. Item number 5, changes to the agenda. I have agreed a change to tonight's running order, and I'll be taking agenda item number 8, which is the full permission application for Oakley Farm, ahead of agenda item number 7, which is the variation. And I hope that that assists the committee. I feel that that's just a better way to approach things and try and get your head around the two tied applications on this. Right. So all done. Rules set out, right order read. Everybody happy? Good. Let's get cracking. So number 5, public participation this evening. Quick roll call. I have got a Mr. John Humphreys. Yep. A Tony Cross. Parish Councillor Owen Connolly. Thank you. Councillor Joe Graziano. Connor McNally. Paul Rogers. Ms. Ros Naylor. And Councillor Stephen Patmore. Excellent. Thank you very much. Those are all the people I've got listed to speak in public participation this evening. Is there anybody who thinks that they should have been on that list that I've not read out? Oh, good. Excellent. I'm aware as well, obviously, we've got a lot of people watching this evening in the room. What I would say is that it is those that are speaking on this second bench here and the members of the committee that participate in the meeting. When I call for questions and for answers, it's just the guys that are on the benches and on the mics to answer. I know that some of the items might be very sort of emotional. You might be very invested in them. And I just ask that, try and, play the game with us a little bit and keep sort of comments and decides to a sensible level, so that the committee is assisted in doing its business. If there are any issues, or if we do need to take a pause to deal with any disruptions, then I'll do that to make sure that we're able to reach a robustly reasoned and fair decision as best we're able to this evening. And I appreciate your patience as we consider the issues. Right. So all of that said, item number 6 is planning application 22/032331/FP, which is the land northeast of Wandon End, Hertfordshire. And I have got Sarah Kasparian to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I also have a verbal update for members before we go to the presentation. We've received 4 late representations from neighbouring residents and Kings Walden Parish Council. No new issues have been raised that have not already been addressed in the committee report. I do note that a plan was circulated earlier today, though, showing the extent of major sites in the vicinity of the application site, which is showing where the boundaries of different sites meet. And I just wanted to clarify that the land shown associated with the airport was labelled as land to be acquired by Luton Airport. And I just wanted to say that's been addressed in my committee report, paragraph 4.10.40, page 67 onwards. And that space is to provide replacement open space, landscape, hedgerow restoration and habitat creation areas, rather than anything built form related to do with the airport. That's all for verbal updates, and if we could move to the slides. Thank you. So the first slide is the red line site, red line plan for the application, which you'll see includes the main bulk of the red line within North Hertfordshire and the cable route running over the boundary into Luton Borough. Next slide, please. This is an aerial view of the site, and the next slide includes the red line, which is the main solar farm part of the site shown in red, and the green shows the cable route approximately into Luton. Next slide, please. And this is a screenshot of the adopted proposals map in the local plan that, and the next slide, sorry. That includes the red line there, showing the east of Luton housing allocation in brown, and the red line application site there. The grey area is obviously Luton, and the green indicates Greenbelt. And next slide, please. And this is a screenshot of the definitive rights of way map, which you can see there are several paths that connect and cross the site. Next slide, please. Onto some photos. There are a lot of them, so I've just put a little map in the corner with a black dot to show where I've taken the photo. That's helpful. So this is taken from Windmill Road, looking west. The first 2 fields here are within the application site, but will not contain solar panels. They'll be retained as green space. Next slide, please. Further along Windmill Road, looking towards the mill, which is the Grade 2 listed building, you'll see that the landscape is fairly flat here, which is the same across most of the northern half of the site. It's not until you go past the mill that the land drops away more dramatically into the next landscape character area of Lily Bottom. Next slide, please. So following along the right of way into the site, this is footpath 11, walking south. There will be panels on both sides of the right of way here, with the gap in between to allow for the continuation of the right of way. And a right of way plan will secure the detail of boundary treatments on either side. Next slide. A little further up, footpath 11, looking towards the heath. Next slide, please. And this is at the junction with footpaths 6, 11 and 13, looking south. You can see Darleywood on the horizon on the left, and Luton Airport on the horizon to the right of the woods. Next slide, please. And standing on the footpath 6, looking towards Tankard's Farm from the east, with a view of 2 of the listed buildings there, and the rest of the site dominated by the more modern, larger agricultural buildings and grain silos. Next slide, please. From footpath 5, this is a view of Tea Green, and this space will be retained as green space. Next slide, please. Standing from a similar point on footpath 5, this is a view in the opposite direction towards Tankard's Farm. Again, a view of the modern agricultural buildings. This field reference number 12 will contain solar panels in this viewpoint. Next slide, please. Having walked through Tea Green and along Tankard's Farm Lane, this is a view of the farmyard from the west, where the listed farmhouse is now visible. The compound previously was located there on the left and has been moved in response to comments on the application. Next slide, please. Again, on Tankard's Farm Lane, and the view looking south, these fields 6 and 7 will contain panels, but with a buffer to the lane, so the panels will be set back. And you can see Luton Airport runway in the middle of the horizon. Next slide, please. This is a view from footpath 4 looking towards Darley Wood. The landscape changes here to a slightly more undulating, slightly smaller field pattern. And there are landscaping proposals, particularly associated with Darley Wood, to enhance biodiversity. Next slide, please. This photo is taken from Darley Road, so view looking west back into the site, the corner of a small pocket of woodland and Darley Wood on the left. This field will contain solar panels, but also noting that the gas pipeline runs northward, starting in this corner on the left. Next slide, please. This is at the junction of Darley Road with Winch Hill Road and looking east, an area highlighted for more sensitive landscape landscape sensitivity. Because the field is at a slightly higher level than the road, so it's quite obvious from this viewpoint. This field will contain panels, but at a reduced height compared to panels elsewhere on the site. And field 4, between this field in this view and Darley Wood, would not contain panels. And that's as a result of changes during the application. Next slide, please. And that's looking from the same point in the opposite direction towards the property Green Acres in the distance, where there will be a green buffer between the residential property and the panels. Next slide, please. And this is a Google map screenshot of the view coming up Winch Hill Road towards the site, thinking about the height of the panels in the context of that viewpoint. Next slide, please. Walking further afield on footpath 43, looking towards the site, you can see Winch Hill Road and Winch Hill Cottage, which are not within the application site, but in the foreground of this photo, and Darley Wood in the distance. So there'll be very little view of the site from this viewpoint with the solar panels. Next slide, please. And again, from footpath 43, you can see the field in the foreground and Darley Wood in the distance. Next slide. Footpath 41, looking towards Wandon End. And next slide, please. And again, 41, footpath 41, close to Darley Road. That's the Darley Road there. And Darley Wood in the distance. Next slide, please. And this is on Lower Road, a Google screenshot, approximately where the substation location would be with the new access. And next slide. This is the last photo on Stony Lane alongside Field 18, which is proposed to be retained as green space and also have a new permissive footpath that would link up rights of way number 26, 23 and 6. This is at the top northern end of the site where the topography starts to change into the Lily Bottom landscape character area. Next slide, please. And onto some plans. So this is the proposed site layout. Next slide, please. And the proposed planting plan, which has a lot of detail on it, which you can't appreciate, but I think you can kind of sense the amount of green and where they're proposing to have new planting of trees and hedgerow and green space. Next slide, please. And this is a plan showing tree protection with a few trees in red, category U, trees to be removed. Next slide. And this is a plan showing the typical section of the frame with panels. Next slide. And this is a plan showing the proposed water tank, one of the proposed water tanks. Next slide, please. This is an inverter. Next slide, please. And a converter. Next slide, please. And a typical battery container. And next slide, please. And inverter substation detail. And next slide, please. And I've just a zoomed in little section on what the batteries would look like within the fields of panels. There'll be 11 little pods where there'll be 4 batteries, 6 converters and 1 inverter. It's a little zoomed in for you, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sarah. Do members of the committee have any questions for the planning officer? Yes, Councillor Brown.
A couple of questions. So there were 2 photographs, I think, in there where it looked to me like there was a crest. It was a crest of a hill, and and the proposal suggests putting panels on that crest. Am I right in thinking that? And how visible will those be?
Sorry, do you remember where?
Well, it was about the 3rd or 4th one. There was a green field where it looked like it was on the crest, and then towards the end where you said the sensitive bit, you said there are going to be panels, but you wouldn't be able to see them. I wasn't entirely convinced. Can you go back over those 2 areas?
So there's like two bits. So the first towards at the beginning.
Yeah.
I was at the northern end of the site. There was kind of plateau. And it's not until the mill, the listed building, and there's like a sort of ridge with some it's quite well planted, and then it slopes down more dramatically to the lily bottom character area. So I felt in landscape terms that the panels at the top, be kind of less dominant on that kind of plateau. And there'll be the panels on the 2 sides of that right of way. I think that's where you were talking about. And then the more sensitive bit down the bottom, just off Darley Road, near Darley Wood, that was where some of the solar panels would be half the height of, so it'd be on the frame, but then there'd only be 1 solar panel, so it'd reduce the height and the impact of them.
Okay, so how visible will they be?
They will be visible there.
Yeah, and from what sort of distance?
I think it's fairly localized within a kind of 500 kilometer type distance. I think that
500, do you mean meters?
Yeah, 500 meters.
Yes, sorry, you said kilometers. I think you meant meters.
Sorry, to a kilometer.
To a kilometer.
I mean, so there was that image from footpath 43. I was walking along. You look up and you see the field in the foreground. And then it plateaus again, where it would be visible in a localized context, but not in that kind of big, longer distance context.
And what about the one that's right on the crest of the hill? It seems to me if it's high up on a plateau, it might be visible from quite a long way away.
Localized, yes, but not from a long distance.
Okay, so that's my first question. So my second question, if that's all right, Chair. The size of the batteries and inverters, and there were some dimensions on that diagram, but I couldn't actually read them. How big are they?
They are set out in the committee report. I think the kind of maximum height is around 2.5 to 3 meters.
Right.
The solar panels are 2.4 meters high, I believe. And the batteries go up to about 2.5 meters high as well, as a kind of outbuilding kind of size. The water tank as well is about 3 meters high. So it's all roughly around that kind of level.
2 to 3 meters is all roughly that size. Okay, thank you very much.
It's all set out in the committee report.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tyson.
Thank you, John. Sorry, can I just go back to that footpath 43 as it's just come up? Is it possible to see the slide, that view with the field of oilseed rape, and then could you just explain how much of that is going to have panels on it, or if any, from that view from the footpath?
So the field of oilseed rape, as you can see, is about 2 kilometres long. And then
I don't know how easy it is to find that slide.
You could see the proposed site layout plan, which was the first one after the photos. There's the field 3 down the bottom.
That one.
That one.
I think. One more. One more. That one.
Yeah, so that yellow field
So that's
is,
Darleywood in the background.
yes.
And the yellow fields there will be,
that was off Winch Hill Road, so
Right.
that is not within the application site.
okay,
So between the yellow field and Darleywood, there will be panels, but they won't be particularly visible from
that
that
point.
point at all.
okay. So that was just one thing I wanted to clarify, and if I can ask another one, just about the gap between the houses in Tea Green and the proposed solar panel site. Could you find a slide that showed us that field? Was it field 14? At the back of
Yeah.
Tea Green.
Keep going. Okay. Next one or two. No, keep going. Yeah, that one.
That one.
Yeah, so there's a field between. I'm sorry, I
Just to
don't
get
know.
a sense of the scale of what's going to be maintained as an open space on this view. Is all of this field here going
Yeah.
to be open space?
Yes, correct.
From what kind of boundary treatment is there between that and then the solar panels?
So a historic hedge is to be reinstated, new hedge comprising native species planting next to the solar panels, and then you have the field and whatever there is at the moment.
Okay.
And that will be secured by a condition.
And does the condition include any reference to the height of that hedge?
There is, which I don't know off the top of my head.
I saw 3.5 meters at
Yeah,
some point, but I
yeah.
didn't know if that applied to all the hedging or just.
So I think different hedges will be secured at different heights because it's more sensitive around rights of way, but there are more opportunities for taller hedges where it's appropriate. So that detail will be secured by condition.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Muir.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions, really. Is there going to be any lighting on 3-metre poles, or is there going to be any fencing around? We've heard about hedging, but is there going to be any fencing anywhere around the solar farm?
There will be fencing, security kind of fencing, which is the post would be 2.2 meters high and the fencing would be 1.85 meters high with a 10 centimeters clearance at the bottom for animals. So that would be around the panels itself, and then there would be certain elevations that would have new hedgerow or tree planting or whatever. So each parcel of panels has been looked at individually to determine what would be most suitable. But yes, there will be fencing, and I don't think any lighting is proposed either, just a few CCTV poles.
Can I have another question? I don't know whether we're being dumped on in North Herts for solar panels, because we've given permission for a large one near the A1M at Stevenage. We've got the one at Bygrave now. We've got one already in Royston. Are we are we creating the amount of electricity that's being used in North Herts? Because if we are, I don't see any reason why we should accept further solar farms.
I'm going to stop that one because that's kind of soapboxy, isn't it, Michael? Got your round of applause. Job done. Pat on the back. I'm going to reframe the question and take some of the politics out of it. I think that the question is around the energy generation and where is the electricity that this potential solar farm is going to generate going to end up?
The electricity goes into the national grid.
Yes, Councillor Allen.
Thank you. I've got here in 4.2.9 that there is going to be CCTV. Doesn't say how many, how high, or where, or what the coverage is. Do we know that yet?
So there will be pole-mounted CCTV cameras. I think they're 3 meters high, designed to view the site. There's a condition to restrict their use. But yeah.
I'm just
can-
concerned about lots of cameras pointing to. I mean, I know
Yeah,
it's a very
so-
secluded area, but they need to be able to see well enough to see anyone intruding, but preferably not into people's homes.
Of course, yeah. So there's a condition prior to the installation of the CCTV cameras for details to be submitted to restrict the camera movements. I'm sure that can be done in the way that where they're pointing and where they pan to, in order to protect residential amenity.
Okay. A simple one would be that they're only able to point inwards to the site. I
Yeah,
suppose.
of course. Yeah, exactly.
So that one's set out at condition 16, which is on page 97. And I think it's a usual condition and something that tends to get dealt with at the sort of post committee stage as well by officers. But any comments that residents make in the event that this is approved in respect to the CCTV cameras, anything that the committee says as well will be noted and taken into account by officers and the applicant when they're looking at the detail of those potential matters that are to be dealt with by condition. I'm not seeing any other members indicate. So I've got a question. If we could bring up which document do I want to see again? Could we pop the site layout up on the screen, please? The other way, or sort of the more detail. While sort of we're finding that, my question was around the rights of way, because I think when we had the zoomed in look at the site layout, it looked like it was potentially going to be quite a narrow gap between the solar panels and those public rights of way. And obviously I've seen the comments and the notes of the concerns that have been raised by members of the public around those rights of way. So just for our benefit, what is the width between the solar panels and the next set of solar panels when you've got the right of way dissecting them?
So the right of way needs to be 10 meters wide, and presumably that's between fencing. The definitive width must be preserved of 10 meters. Or there is. Okay. So there'll be a right of way plan to get that detail. But yeah, 10 meters, and the amendments to the scheme have tried to secure where open side to a right of way where possible. Obviously that can't be achieved everywhere, but as much as possible.
Yes, Councillor Mason.
Thanks, Chair. I think I was thinking along the same lines as you. So that access, the retained right of way, got fences on both sides. Do we have any idea of the nature of the fences? I think I saw a comment somewhere about concern about it feeling tunnel-like. So do we have any more information on the nature of the fences and I guess lighting for that? I don't know, I can see issues either way on that, but is this going to be somewhere people are going to be happy to walk down?
So I think the detail on it will be secured by the condition, but there have been discussions about whether there should be maybe two hedgerows, the height of them, or whether 2 fence panels. The fencing is a plan on the application. Like I said, that was 2.2 meters high to the post, but the panels, the wire panels themselves, which you can see through, would be 1.85 meters high. So yeah, the detail on that plan, which I appreciate I can't see in full detail at this scale, but there might be like a hedgerow on one side and a fence on the other, just to kind of change the dynamic. Like it might feel more open on the fence side because you can see through it, whereas the hedgerow you wouldn't be able to. But obviously for biodiversity and landscape, it's preferable to have hedgerow. So it's kind of a bespoke approach around the site, depending on the situation.
Check. Can I ask a supplementary?
Yeah.
So on the fence, you're saying a wire fence, not a high wooden fence.
No, yeah, you can see through it like it looks like a kind of chain type fence. You'd be able to see through it. Metal, galvanized steel.
Okay, thank you. And if colleagues want to sort of have a look at what the rights of way condition says, that's obviously condition 13, page 96 to the top of 97.
There was an update, a
Is there
written
an
update on
update?
that one as well. It's just been.
Is that on the
consolidated.
supplementary papers that were circulated today?
Yeah, no, it was published yesterday. It's still condition number 13, but it's on the 3rd page of the update.
Okay. So if members have got the update open on ModGov, just to double check the wording, in case you want to reference any of that in questions, either to objectors, the applicant, or as part of the debate later on. Councillor Billing.
Hiya. It's again, like there's a lot of questions regarding the fencing, the kind of bushes, hedgerows. I'm just trying to look through the details regarding the maintenance of hedgerows, etc. Just kind of because if they get overgrown, then the right of way isn't the specified amount. I'm just looking for the information.
So condition 8 is for a landscape and ecological management plan, which requires the submission of details about the landscaping to be submitted, and then also details of the management and monitoring of landscaping and ecological features. So that would include hedgerows, and I think rights of way would also have something to say about the management of hedgerows as well in that condition.
Go on, Michael. I'll have another.
Fine, thank you. I was thinking of fire with the battery storage. I don't know how easy it is that fire could start. If there was a fire there, is there ample room for a fire engine to get through the fencing and onto the site?
Yes, so the last set of amendments to the application was to deal with change to or take additional guidance given on this type of application and fire safety. So that's been incorporated into proposed condition number 14 on battery safety management, which deals with fire suppression systems for the batteries and technology itself. And also an emergency response plan and also a fire hydrant provision. So that it's kind of covered from lots of angles.
Okay. Do members have any further questions? Yes, Councillor Tyson.
Am I allowed another one? I meant to ask it earlier, but it was about the construction traffic. The access point, I think I know where that is, but where is it coming from and what is the road network like that it will have to use?
May I ask our highways colleague to answer that? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the construction traffic vehicles will all come from the Luton area, and they will arrive via Darley Road and up Wandon End Road. So they'll be kept away from T Green. So they'll all come from the conurbation of Luton, and we're obviously that's governed by a construction traffic management plan. So we obviously wouldn't want to see any vehicles going into T Green itself. So everything will be very tightly managed by the CTMP.
And just to follow that up, you say that they're coming up Darley Road and can't remember the name of the other one now.
And Wandon End Road.
And these are roads that are suitable for heavy goods vehicles and articulated vehicles.
So we have a construction traffic management plan which will govern how the vehicles arrive and depart the site in the best possible fashion. Yes, they are country lanes and they're not exactly suitable for HGVs. If for example, we're siting an industrial unit on Wandon End Road, that obviously wouldn't be suitable. However, the construction period is for a limited amount of time, 6 to 9 months. So that will minimise inconvenience. And also, it's only a short distance from Darley Road to the construction compound. So I'm content that given the shortish construction period and a well-regulated CTMP, that the impact can be mitigated, and we will be holding the contractors to that plan.
Can I just?
I know what you're going to say. I can't, unfortunately, apply a point of order to members of the public that are watching from the gallery because they are not beholden to the council's constitution or our code of conduct. However, ladies and gentlemen, I hear the rumblings, I hear the mutterings. I know that there are going to be asides and private comments that you might want to make or that you might need to just get off your chest for therapeutic purposes. However, the committee is trying its best to hear the evidence and do good work this evening. And we don't want members of the committee to miss something that might be important. So if we could try and keep the background noise to the absolute minimum, that would be super helpful to everyone and help us get to a decision. Okie dokie. Thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Tyson.
Thank you. Just to follow that up then from the highways officer, you said that you're confident that with a well-regulated construction traffic management plan, this will be a suitable, i.e. safe route for articulated trucks and other HGVs, which will be existing in quite large numbers, presumably over the course of that period of time. What do you mean by well-regulated?
So there should be banks persons on the access and egress points on Wandon End Road. They should be able to see right down to Darley Road. The deliveries will not be the well-regulated CTMP. They shouldn't come all at the same time. They should be timed throughout the day, so the impact is reduced. So the combination of banks persons, a good CTMP should at least seek to ensure that the inconvenience is minimised to the best possible extent. That obviously, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason.
Thanks. I mean, further to that, it's got me thinking about trucks now. Sorry. I'm just trying to visualize what a solar farm looks like and how big the equipment that's going to be bought in is. What sort of vehicles are we talking about? Are we talking? Because nothing seems terribly big. It's not like building a tower block. I can't imagine giant cranes coming in. On the other hand, I don't know what sort of trucks they bring these things in. So yeah.
I'm going to say that nobody heard what was said just then, because the members of the committee can't take it into account. And if they did apply any weight to it, we could potentially get into a little bit of legal trouble. So as helpful as that information might be in a different space, if anybody else has points like that, please, please, please try and hold them inside, because whatever decisions made this evening, we don't want it to be appealed because somebody said the wrong thing at the wrong time. So can I ask the highways officer, please, do you have any insight on the size of the vehicles?
No. Well, Chair, it's set out in Table 5 of the CTMP in terms of the number of movements and the type of equipment that needs to be brought in, but it simply expresses HGV traffic, about 1,200 one-way trips, 2,400 two-way trips over 9 months. So obviously there will be a variety of vehicles, but for the purposes of this assessment, they're simply termed as HGV traffic.
But what I will say is if members speaking later on in the meeting want to flag up a particular thing, if you've got time to add that in as a note during your speech, go for it. Bear in mind that you've got a set amount of time and I'm going to be tight on timings later on. That's Highways happy? Yeah. Any further questions for officers from the committee at this point in time? Councillor Billing.
Hiya, I'm just trying to figure out the current use of the land. It's obviously just purely green space, but is there any land that is getting turned into solar panel farms that currently has actual farming on it, whether it's agriculture or animals?
So the site at the moment is in arable rotation, and I think so it's purely agriculture at the moment. With the solar farm, it would be a more restricted agricultural use. It won't go away. It will come back in 40 years. There's also that option of grazing as well, and that's quite common in order to manage the grass. So yeah, a less flexible agricultural use.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Muir.
Thank you for allowing me to come back. A question to the highways chap. They're very small country lanes. There's a lot of traffic with parents taking their kids to school. So could one have an agreement that there's no vehicles going to the solar farm before 9:30 and none after 3 o'clock, so that they don't interfere with parents delivering or picking up their children from the schools?
Yeah, do you want to come back, either Highways or Sarah, if there's a particular condition or in the management plan?
Sorry, I'd have to seek consultation with Sarah. However, in urban areas, such a clause, as the council has mentioned, is quite commonplace. My initial assessment is that such a clause may not be necessary in this instance, because all we have, the HGVs are only going to be routing up a short section of Wandon End Road and then onto Darley Road and into Luton. So obviously they're well away from the village of T Green. If it's something, although I wouldn't be adverse to having such a clause if councillors consider it essential. However, in this case, I thought, given that it's a rural area, we're keeping HGVs outside of the village and and then back onto Darley Road and then into Luton. I didn't consider that such a clause would be necessary, but as I said, in other instances in urban areas, it is something we commonly do to try and mitigate construction vehicles in where there are schools or.
Okay. Heard that. I'm hearing that there's potentially a condition that members might wish to look into around the hours of operation, given that that's not covered by the construction traffic management plan at this point in time. But that's something that we can hold on to for later on in the meeting and in the debate. I don't think you've got anything to add on that one at the moment, do you, Sarah? No. Good. Okay. Councillor Billing.
Sorry, do you mind if I ask another question? Thank you. It's regarding, so obviously a lot of construction will be done on the main site itself. That little bit that goes then into Luton, what kind of work along there? Because is that power line specifically, or is that underground? A bit more clarification on that.
You're referring to the blue area further south, are you? That kind of field?
When you look at the initial first plan, I think there's the red lining that goes into the
the cable route.
the cable route.
Yes,
That's it. Sorry.
yes.
Yes.
So that's the it plugs into the substation in Luton, and it's essentially digging up the road to put the cables in.
So there will be additional construction along that whole section as well.
Yeah, so that's within Luton Borough, and that's managed by their decision-making process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more members indicate with questions for officers at this moment in time. So I will move us on to our first objector. So that's Mr. John Humphreys. John, you've got 3 minutes.
Good evening, Chair and councillors of the Planning Control Committee. My name is John Humphreys. I've lived in Tea Green for 47 years. I'm a director of our 200-year-old family business, Oliver's, which has traded at Wandon End since 1890. We employ 53 local people and supply and service agricultural equipment to many customers in Hertfordshire, Bedfordshire and beyond. In many cases, our deliveries and services are time critical, especially during harvest. The solar construction compound is located off Wandon End Road, a single carriage country lane just beyond our staff car park. There has been no consideration to the health and safety of our staff walking across and along the lane to come and go to work, and no slide, I might add tonight, to illustrate the construction compound location. Furthermore, the submitted plans show 2 HGVs and an HGV and a car, or an HGV and a car are not able to pass one another along the majority of the construction route, which runs directly past our main entrance. 2,324 HGV two-way movements are proposed over the 9-month construction period. Clearly, the number of vehicles will fluctuate over this time. However, the applicant has equally divided the number of movements over the period, stating that there will only be 12 daily HGV movements. This is wholly unrealistic and doesn't account for other construction associated vehicles, as well as the 242 daily movements from our own depot. The first North Hart strategic economic objective is to support the local economy and to enable existing businesses to thrive. The level of construction traffic will undoubtedly conflict with existing road users, our employees, our customers, our deliveries, notwithstanding the bus route, commuters and other local residents. The construction traffic will undoubtedly cause significant interruption to our day-to-day business. The officer has attached a moderate benefit to the economy of the solar farm without considering the detrimental impact to existing businesses. Not only will this impact us as a business, but all the agricultural businesses that we service. This is in direct conflict to your strategic economic objective and should have material weight in the decision-making process.
Got 30 seconds.
We contend that the economic impact is a harm rather than a moderate benefit, and we disagree with the planning balance of the perceived very special circumstances that seek to overcome the substantial harm to the green belt, local landscape and heritage assets. Our own soil analysis, which was submitted to your council, found the majority of the site being best and most versatile agricultural land. The development of this with solar panels is directly contrary to the government's drive to boost our food security and produce more food in the UK. We respectfully request that the application is refused.
Thank you very much. Okay, and are there any points of clarification that members of the committee want to ask Mr. Humphreys? Yes, I had Councillor Allen first.
Right, Mr. Humphreys, sir, 242 daily movements, is that cars other than HGVs?
That's a mixture. The 242 daily movements is all our vehicles, which would be, we've got 53 employees, so that's 53 times 2, obviously, journeys back and 2 to work. Our service vehicles, the service vehicles of our suppliers, the delivery vehicles of companies that deliver parts to us, our own HGVs, our own rigid lorries, and any transport that comes back and 2 to Wandon End during generally a busy time.
So not including any public access?
Sorry?
Not including any so I can't actually turn. Not including any public access?
Well, and public access. Oh, yes, but that's a good point. I mean, we have the public come into our parks department. So yeah, that doesn't include them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Mason.
Thank you. First of all, I'm going to apologise on behalf of my colleagues, just to stress to members of the public and the speakers that the councillors are forced to look this way. And it always, for me, when I sit down there, it always feels terribly rude having their back to members of the public. We have no choice. It's the only advantage of sitting up here is I'm actually looking at you. My question was around, I'm back on trucks again, I'm sorry, was around what's the nature of the vehicles for your own business? Because I can get the point you're saying about the interference with the construction traffic, but just to give us some idea of the roads and the usage at the moment, what sort of vehicles, I think you mentioned HGVs, so what's the sort of usage of vehicles out of your own business and what route do they take?
Well, there's one exit, or two exits really, one entry and one exit we use in the way that we operate. They will come, people who come to see us generally come in off Wandon End Road directly, almost not quite, but directly opposite what will be the construction compound. The vehicles that come into Wandon End and the business they will be conducting could be our customers coming to see us. They could be service vehicles returning or going to service jobs out in North Hertfordshire. It can be numerous HGVs. For instance, we have franchises with, is that a problem? Can you hear me all right? We have franchises with JCB, with Class, with a number of major agricultural suppliers, and they are constantly on the deliver to us with new machines into Wandon End. Then we're on the way out, hopefully with them sold, to deliver them elsewhere. So it's just delivery of vehicles in and out is crucial to our operation.
Thank you. Do you colleagues have any further questions for Mr. Humphreys? No. Okay, thank you very much. So our second objector is Mr. Tony Cross. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Chair, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to represent the residents against Wandon End Solar Farm, who since 2022 have campaigned against the wholly inappropriate plans of Evolution Power to decimate our beautiful countryside. The site proposed for this 40-year development is equivalent to 165 football pitches and will entirely fill the Greenbelt countryside in between our 4 communities of Breachwood Green, Darley Hall, Wandon End and Tea Green, and will be in direct view of at least 38 homes. This application is one of 3 major developments in the area, which include 2,100 homes in the east of Luton development and a massive proposed expansion of Luton Airport, all within a 2-mile radius. North Herts District Council has recently granted applications for solar installations at Wymondley and Bygrave, which already places North Herts way above the national average for ground-mounted solar. The Greenbelt was established to assist the safeguarding of countryside from encroachment, to stop neighbouring communities from merging into one another, which in this case has been categorised as significant below the planning officer and even as inappropriate by the applicant. What is currently a beautiful undulating landscape traversed by no less than 13 well-used footpaths and categorised as best most versatile agricultural land will now become a maze of tall security fenced tunnels with 24-hour CCTV monitoring. This is not a discrete field of solar panels in the middle of nowhere, but an industrial development that will have a negative impact on the visual amenity and landscape openness, a fact confirmed in the NHDC independent consultants report. Given the very real fire risks associated with lithium-ion batteries, and adding to that footpath access to the general public and a major high-pressure gas pipeline barely a metre underground running underneath the middle of the site, is this not a serious concern?
Got just under a minute.
Would the public normally be given access to such a hazardous infrastructure? It is our opinion that this application represents a very significant risk to our rural communities and goes firmly against the government's national planning policy framework. We struggle to understand how a decision can be made with 15 critical plans or documents still missing on such a critical development. And one final fact, no such infrastructure has been in place for 40 years, decommissioned, and the land returned successfully to agricultural production. It is the responsibility of all of us in this room to ensure that we make decisions that are in the best interest of the population and the environment. Based on the facts presented, we firmly believe that this planning application should be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to make a slight aside for colleagues. Obviously, there's reference to government policy, etc., etc. There was a thing that happened on the 4th of July, wasn't there? Until and unless new government policy comes forward, the framework that we're operating under is the existing policy framework. We cannot and we will not be second guessing what any new government or ministers might be bringing forward in terms of legislation. So we're working with the existing framework and statutory guidance, etc., for the time being. Do colleagues have any points of clarification for Mr. Cross? No. Well, if members of the committee don't want to raise one, I will ask one. The footpaths, there are 13 of them and you describe them as being well used. Could you give us some context? Do you have any sort of information around how many people, the types of people that use them, the purposes of the journey across those rights of way?
Well, so there are your general people from the localities who walk their dogs in these. That's much well used for dog walking. You've also got ramblers that visit the area because it's an extremely beautiful and pleasant environment and area. There is also people who are traversing from one community to the other. There's pubs and venues over at Tea Green that people from Breachwood would visit, from Darley, etc. So there's a lot of crisscross traffic that goes across it. There's also people who are doing it for leisure and pleasure, and there's also people walking their dogs. So there's I mean, we quite often, I live actually in direct view of it and right next to the main footpath that goes from Breachwood straight across to Tea Green. Quite often we get large parties of ramblers, 10, 20 people walking along with their rucksacks and their maps and a few dogs and commenting on how beautiful the countryside is. So that is they're generally well used footpaths for a variety of reasons. Achievements on any of the roads or street lighting around where we are as well. So thus adding to the use of the footpaths and the importance.
Okay, thank you. I think that's helpful context for the committee. Any further questions for Mr. Cross? No? All right, thank you very much. I shall move on to our third objector, which is Parish Councillor Owen Connolly. Owen, you've got 3 minutes.
My name is Owen Connolly. I'm a parish councillor for Kings Walden. The local community has spent months researching and educating themselves about solar farms. Importantly, the output from the proposed solar farm must have reduced to well below the 49.9 megawatts claimed in the officer's report because the applicant has reduced the number of panels. Therefore, any reference to the amount of energy this project will generate is currently unknown. So when weighing up the benefits and harms, the very substantial renewable energy generation benefit can now not be relied upon. The urgent local need benefit, also listed as very substantial, is not correct, as the intention is to feed the output into the national grid through Luton Infrastructure and to provide electricity to Luton Airport and Vauxhall, based in Bedfordshire, not North Hertfordshire, which is also set to have a disproportionate number of solar farms for its size. The applicant's soil survey is at odds with a recent survey that demonstrates that soil on the land is at present 80% best and most versatile land. The other 20% is 3B, which is also important for food production. The loss of agricultural land of good quality is against the government's strategy to safeguard food production in this country to avoid reliance on imports. The grazing of sheep proposed as an alternative agricultural use below the panels would add to methane production and therefore have a greater impact on climate change. The fields have a recent history of fire. If there is a fire on that field again, with the addition of all the fences and boundaries, there will be a greater risk of death to anyone caught in it, and the majority of the area will be burning before the fire department can arrive. The presence of large batteries so close to residential properties and 13 rights of way is of huge concern to us. Being told that something we have already experienced is unlikely to occur is of little comfort when the result could be exploding industrial-sized batteries. From the officer's report, fields 8 and 9, closest to the residents of Millway and Breachwood Green, has had additional panels added to compensate for panels lost elsewhere? Why have mitigations been made to address proximity to other homes, but not here? We strongly feel that if the council is minded to grant permission, this should not include fields 8 and 9. We're an area already hugely impacted with major development proposals. It is legitimate for you to consider the cumulative effects on the local residents. We submitted a map which illustrates the effect of this application and 2 other developments on our local area. 2,100 homes on the east of Luton site will eradicate existing villages, and the Luton Airport application to expand the airport from 19 to 32 million passengers is due to be decided in October. Luton Airport is currently in the process of developing their own solar farm under permitted development. The east of Luton development borders Tea Green, which makes this area of productive farmland the only parcel of land which protects Breachwood Green and Tea Green from falling victim to urban sprawl.
30 seconds.
Members of the committee, no one in this room would argue that solar farms cannot contribute to society, but they must be in suitable places. Please ask yourself, is this really a suitable place? Thank you.
Excellent. Very good. You speeded through that and you had 15 seconds spare at the end. So very well done. Right. Do you colleagues have any questions? Yes. Councillor Muir. You might not. There we go. Yeah.
Could I see the diagram of the solar farm? Because I listened that the chap was saying 8 and 9. I'd like to see where 8 and 9 is, to see whether that can be moved or not included in the final analysis.
That's fine. If we could get that up on the screen, and officers just be prepared, perhaps sort of towards the end when you're summing up to answer that point. And I saw Councillor Allen indicated as well.
That's 8 and 9 there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Not a question specifically, but there was a couple of refuted reports and disregarded planning officer reports pointed out in that speech. I was wondering if the officers would have the chance to respond to those.
Yeah, so I think again that'll be something that Sarah brings up when she summarises everything at the end of this, and I can see that she's been taking notes throughout, so we'll probably clarify for us at the end. Any questions specifically for Mr. Connolly? No, lovely. I'm going to leave that diagram up for us for the time being because it's potentially still going to be relevant and will add context to what some of the other speakers have to say. So that's all of the public objectives. Thank you very much for your contributions. I'm going to move on to our member advocate, which is Councillor Graziano. Councillor Graziano, you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Chair, members and representatives and residents. I'm Councillor Joe Graziano and lived in the parish of Kings Walden for over 16 years. I'm here to advocate on behalf of the Stop Wandon End Solar. Wandon End resides in the most westerly part of our district, boundaried off by Luton only 2 miles away, also adjacent to an outstanding area of natural beauty. You've seen the pictures. The area sits amongst some of the most beautiful parts of our historic county, predating our Roman ancestors who lived and farmed the land 2,000 years ago. The buffer zone is the green belt, which shields us from urban sprawl. The National Planning Policy Framework states that the fundamental aim of the Greenbelt policy is to prevent urban sprawl by keeping land permanence and openness. This part of our district is continually threatened with the gigantic airport expansion to cater to 32 million passengers per annum, the 2,100 homes as part of East of Luton's housing, and now a solar farm of 106 hectares. Have members lived in this area? The proposed major sites are situated in a 2-mile radius of each other. People's health is already being impacted by excessive surface traffic on single track lanes, light pollution, wildlife destruction and land degradation due to excessive traffic and noise pollution. We do not want urban Luton sprawl in North Herts. It's going to resemble a jungle mix of houses, roundabouts to glass panels in perpetuity from Wigmore to Wandon End and Breachwood Green. 402 people are justifiably worried about this plan. Most decent, hardworking people favour renewable technologies because they demand cleaner air and understand the need to decarbonise and welcome the desire to produce cheap and non-polluting electricity done sensitively whilst respecting the natural and historical landscape. I welcome the climate emergency strategy the council announced on the 21st of May 19, that our district should be carbon neutral by 2040, underpinned by national policy. But the strategy is far from being ambitious. At what point in the strategy document does the council state it requires how many more solar farms should be constructed to generate however many megawatts of power? And then the desire to build on green belt is not reflective of planning policy. It does not make any sense. The climate strategy does not state how many solar farms it requires to offset the national carbon deficit. And why should it? Electricity produced in some random field in North Arts does not mean it gets sent to homes in Hitchin. It gets transferred to the national grid via transformers, sending it wherever it is required. Electricity generated is not managed by the local authority. When project managers and planners portray pretty pictures in their marketing brochures of how electricity is being farmed locally and being told it's for the local community who will benefit from it, with wild deer and animals roaming freely against that harass fencing to farm animals grazing beneath the panels, is disingenuous and more of a PR stunt. The Department of Energy and Climate Change estimated that there were 600,000 acres of south-facing commercial roof space in the United Kingdom. Then why use high-grade farmland in an age of food insecurity? It is important to mandate energy security whilst not disadvantaging food security in a volatile world. The council is better minded in forging ahead with pro-ambitious residential installation of solar panels, offering better cohesive incentives for external installation, heat source pumps and boiler upgrades, for example. There is a lack of progress on this. However, some progress has been made on panels being installed on this office alone, but we need more being built on large industrial units such as B&M and Asda, to name a few, who could share the load, not on the green belt. CPRE have summarised the use of solar generation in the green belt at not any cost, not impacting the views of local communities. As technologies evolve to the next level, we must be thoughtful, sensitive to public opinion and mindful of the wider environmental and visual impacts. I'd remind members of this committee that national government is accountable for our energy production, its sourcing and future stability. Data from CPRE stated that a 140-acre solar park is capable of supplying electricity to 9,000 homes. One wind turbine in the North Sea can power 16,000 homes. The previous government had confirmed that offshore wind would produce more than enough electricity to power every home in the country by 2030, based on current electricity usage. Based on this alone, we do not need the commercial companies or startups pertaining to best serve our national energy crisis. And we do not want North Hearts turning into the Las Vegas solar commercial zone. This project is not fit for purpose or required for Wandon End or North Hearts. We have one moment in time to make things right, and now is this moment. The sensible decision is to say no, not in my backyard.
Thank you very much. Well done. Excellent first outing at a planning committee. Right. Back to business. Colleagues, any questions for Councillor Graziano? No? Okay, great. So I will then move us on to hear from those that are in favour or supporting the application. I've only got the applicant listed, so it is over to the applicant's agent, I believe, which is Conor McNally and Paul Rogers. You've got 5 minutes, gentlemen.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Conor McNally and I'm a director of the applicant. There is an urgent need for new renewable electricity generation. This urgent need is a critical national priority, and this new generation needs to be brought forward as soon as possible. This is the stated position of the overarching national policy statement for energy that is already designated in January 2024 and represents the most recent national policy for UK energy. It goes on to confirm that this urgent need for renewables should outweigh any residual environmental impacts, including harm to the green belt or any landscape impact. The Committee for Climate Change's annual assessment issued earlier today notes that the previous government acted inconsistently in this regard, and as a result, there are only credible plans in place to achieve a third of the emission reductions that we need to meet the UK's 2030 obligations. The new Labour government is seeking to fix this and decarbonise the grid by 2030. This will require a 5 times increase in solar, which is the equivalent of 1,000 projects of this size. It has made clear that renewable energy is a key priority, and it has already announced that it will introduce planning reform to prioritise energy projects. As such, there is a very strong and increase in national support for projects of this type. North Hertfordshire has declared a climate emergency and committed to achieve a net zero district by 2040. To do this, it will need at least 6 projects of the size of this proposal. If electricity demand doubles, as is expected by government, then the number of projects you will need will increase to 12. To date, you have granted permission for 2 projects, and there are none other projects currently in the system. You have heard from local residents who object to the proposal and would prefer that the generation that we all need is located elsewhere. They claim that rooftop is capable of meeting the need, but this is just not true. Even if every one of the 52,600 domestic properties in North Herts installed south-facing, perfectly designed rooftop solar, the district would still need at least 4 projects of this size to meet its climate commitment, with this number doubling if demand doubles as expected. The objector parties have made many other unsubstantiated claims this evening. Unfortunately, my allocated time does not allow me to respond to each of these, but I'd be happy to respond to members' questions, and I note that the officer report does not allocate any weight to these claims. I would also be keen to respond on some questions that have been raised regarding fencing, lighting, public rights-of-way and construction traffic to ensure there's no misunderstanding. Your officer's robust assessment is that this project is well located near to an electricity substation, which is key for generation projects, within a landscape area that the report and your own landscape advisor confirm is not uncommon and in poor condition. The site area is not subject to any landscape, ecology or culture designation, and no objections have been received from any statutory body. Objectors claim this is not the right location for a solar project, but your officer report has only identified 2 limited environmental effects, and it is therefore difficult to justify which other locations in North Herts would be preferable. Assessing the 2 effects, the report identifies landscape and visual impact, but confirmed the project has been designed to minimise the effects and that the residual harm level is moderate. It also identifies impacts to the setting of heritage assets, but confirms the benefits of the proposal outweigh the less than substantial harm. No other harm is identified. In particular, the land quality is lower than the North Herts average and significantly lower than the 2 sites you've already agreed to grant permission to, and half the site will be designated for biodiversity use. In contrast, the report identifies very substantial weight should be allocated to renewable energy generation, very substantial weight should be allocated to local need, and moderate weight should be allocated to economic biodiversity and post-decommissioning landscape benefits.
1 minute.
Concluding any harm is clearly outweighed by the benefits. In considering the balance here, the Wyman-Lee project decision, which was called in by the Secretary of State following granted permission by North Herts, is a material consideration. The Secretary of State upheld that permission, notwithstanding the greater number of negative impacts identified at Wyman-Lee. Whilst it is true that both these projects are in the Greenbelt, practically the whole of North Hertfordshire is in the Greenbelt, and therefore if you are to meet your commitment, you will need to develop in Greenbelt land. Given that North Herts robustly defended your decision at Wyman-Lee, confirming that the very special circumstances required to grant Greenbelt development existed, any rational consideration of the plan and balance for this proposal should result in the grant of permission, as the benefits are the same, but the adverse effects are lower. Your officer team, professionals, all of them, has concluded that the very substantial benefits of this proposal clearly outweigh the harm to Greenbelt, together with all other harm in combination. And I ask that the committee determines this application in line with their recommendation to grant permission.
Thank you very much. Thank you to members of the public as well for managing through that. It was very beneficial to allow the committee to hear everything. Right, colleagues. Reference back to my previous point about outgoing government, incoming government and current policy and what we need to consider when we're making our decisions. We can ask questions, points of clarification of the applicant, and indeed the applicant has invited us to ask certain questions as well. So the floor is yours, colleagues. Questions for the applicant. Wow. Councillor Mason.
Thank you. There's been a number of concerns raised around fire risk and whatever. Can I ask what measures are being put in place in terms of mitigating fire risk? Because I noticed from the papers there seems to be a discussion about whether they have fire hydrants or water tanks and whatever. I was just seeking some assurance as to what you're proposing to put in place.
Thank you. The project fully complies with the National Fire Chiefs Council's guidance, which is the predominant guidance for fire risk in the UK for battery projects in the UK. That requires an on-site water source, which is what the water tanks deliver, and a hydrant that is located near to any element that could be subject to fire risk. To put the fire risk in some context, if I may, in the UK since 2006, 90 battery storage projects have been installed across the country, many in urban areas, and 4.5 million hours of operational usage has been accrued, which is about 500 years. During that whole period, there has been one fire in Liverpool.
Okay, Councillor Billing.
You did actually mention it in your speech. I will bring it up because it has been a question that we've been asking regarding lighting and CCTV, please.
There's no permanent lighting whatsoever. There's emergency lighting associated with the substation and inverter stations, which would only be used in an emergency, as it's described. CCTV is 3 meters high. It will be inward facing to reduce any impacts on local community.
Thank you.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you very much. Would you be able to just confirm to me the actual structure of the farm, that it's going to be a structure that is built upon the land, not part of the land, like a permanent building, like a housing development or something? And if there is any actual disruption to the land, what it is? And if you could just confirm for me how much it is a temporary structure, it's not like a building.
Thank you. The application is for a 40-year temporary permission. The word temporary is key. For land to be converted from greenfield to brownfield, it needs to be previously developed land, which is clearly defined in the current national planning framework as land that has a permanent structure or did have a permanent structure. Clearly, this is not permanent. It's clearly defined as temporary, and that is what it is. There's a planning condition that requires us to remove everything bar the biodiversity improvements, landscaping, at the end of 40 years. In addition, under our agreement with the landowner, we have an obligation to remove everything, and we are securing that obligation with cash security to ensure that that will happen whether or not we comply with that obligation.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
You didn't mention in your speech anything about community engagement. Would you like to comment about how you've engaged with the community over this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We held a consultation event and then we followed that up with the presentation with the community at an early stage in the proposal. That resulted in a pretty dramatic redesign of the scheme, where panels that were previously close to Mill Way were removed. Somebody asked earlier about distances. There's a minimum of 130 meters between any settlement and any panels, and in between there is greenfields and a number of hedgerows.
Thank you. I saw Councillor Tyson indicate and then switch it off. Do you want to have a go?
I'll try. I'm just a little bit intrigued by what appears to be your contention that every local authority ought to be generating enough renewable energy to cover its energy use. Is that the message that is that correct in my understanding of what you're saying there?
On the basis that your 2040 climate commitment is to reach net zero, the only way that a local authority can do that is not to emit carbon into the atmosphere. And therefore, if you're using non-renewable energy for your own use, you by definition will not meet your commitment. So it's not my contention, it's the council's contention. That is what you're seeking to achieve.
I think that that's an interpretation that's open to.
It's just not, that's what net zero means,
Okay.
councillor.
I understand what net zero means, but
Debate through the chair, and I hear where you're going. I see where you're going. Warning issued. Do you want to? I'm going to go to Councillor Mantle, but then I think the report set out quite clearly the trade-off and the environmental considerations and the substantial harm elements in respect of the green belt, and also the points around where this energy is going to be generated and go to. I think that there is dispute between what officers have said in their report about the amount that is likely to be generated within the district versus the future need. But ultimately, we're determining this application that's before us based on what we know today and based on the context of current policy considerations. I'm going to go to Councillor Mantle.
Thank you. My question is completely different from others. What will those areas that are shown as green on the plan be actually used for, and what will happen on them?
They're used for biodiversity improvements and enhancements. That will create a biodiversity net gain for this site of 150% relative to the current level. That is 15 times the mandatory legal requirement that has been introduced recently by the government. And it addresses completely this council's declaration of an ecological emergency. So this project does two things. It addresses both your climate emergency, which you made in 2019, and your ecological emergency, which you stated in 2023.
Sorry, Madam Chairman, that doesn't actually answer my question.
No, I think, are you asking sort of about the specifics?
What will
of
actually
it?
happen on them? What will it be on them? Are they going to be left as wild spaces?
Yes,
Are they
they'll
going
be
to
left as green spaces.
Farmed? Are they going to
No,
be
they'll
maintained?
be left as green spaces with wildflowers, grass meadows, hedgerow treatments, reinstatement of historic hedgerows, elements for animals, skylark patches, etc., all to be agreed in detail with your officers as part of a landscape and ecological management plan.
But that looks to be, looking at the plan, roughly half the area of the overall site is green.
It's good, isn't it?
Does that mean that the sheep will just be grazing under the blue areas and there'll be wildflowers left on the areas that are green on the map? It doesn't appear to make much sense at the moment.
I think sort of we're potentially straying into asking what the detail of the landscape and ecological management plan is likely to be. That is set out, well, I mean, the scope of the LEMP is set out at condition 8, but it might be beneficial if the applicant could sort of just maybe sort of give us some indication of, you've got a lot of green fields there and you've also got the solar panels there. What are some of the things that you're likely to be including in the LEMP?
The type of planting mixes and what we need to do to maintain that mix in order to deliver the biodiversity net gain.
All right, I think that's the end of that line of questioning. Thank you, colleagues. Okie dokie. Any further yeah, Councillor Mason.
Some understandable, I guess, concerns have been raised about road traffic movement, particularly around school times and all the rest of it. Is that anything you've given any consideration to and around limiting access times or whatever? Because I do share those concerns.
So the construction traffic route from the M1 is 7 kilometres. It's all two-way traffic apart from the last 150 or so metres, which passes the Oliver's site. The objector from Oliver's has already told you that they already run HGVs up that road on a regular basis. In fact, he's concerned that we'll disrupt the number of his HGVs that can enter his site. So I think the concerns around construction traffic, by the objector's own words, are somewhat not credible. I'd be very happy to accept a condition regarding restrictions on our HGVs to avoid school times, and we've done that on other projects in the UK.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm not seeing any more members indicate, so I'll use my chair's prerogative and ask a question. Obviously, at the moment, there's no lighting proposed on the site. We've heard from residents some of the usage of those footpaths, and obviously in the comments that were raised online prior to this meeting, there were concerns about public safety. If you've got people that are traversing between the villages using those rights of way, obviously they're not lit at the moment, but they're also not enclosed at the moment. Has there been any consideration given to things like stud lighting, etc., that could perhaps help the community feel a little bit safer while it was using those rights of way when they've been closed in?
So there is no lighting on the site, as I've stated. The footpaths, just to be clear, are in a minimum of 8 metre wide spacing, and the fencing is deer fencing, so agricultural type fencing on each side. So it is not enclosed fencing. Our standard approach is to have one side to be hedgerow and one side to be fencing. Your own landscape advisors asked us to install hedges on both sides. We made the point to them that this may create a corridor effect, and we'd be very happy to work with your officers to agree a suitable approach to limit the impact of any corridors.
Okay, colleagues, final call for questions for the applicant. Nope. I am seeing no questions. So what I propose that we do is invite Sarah to sum up on the issues and points raised during questioning. And then after that, before we move to the debate, we might take a break depending how members feel. So Sarah.
Thank you. So I wanted to respond to a couple of points. Firstly, on the amount of energy produced by the scheme, which I've set out in the written update, point number 4. Essentially, the maximum export capacity for the scheme when it was originally submitted was 49.9 megawatts. And because of the changes to the scheme, the maximum's now been reduced to 48, so a slight reduction in the amount of energy that it can export because of the number of panels that are on the site. But that's all detailed in that point number 4. And on best and most versatile land and the soil survey agricultural land classification, I wanted to draw your attention to the written ministerial statement from 2024, which is set out in paragraph 4.12.7 of the officer, 4.12.1 on page 73. And onwards, the written ministerial statement from 2024 kind of tweaks the position slightly on agricultural land, but regardless of how much, what the proportion of grade 2, 3A and 3B, I come to a neutral weighting on that matter. So, and that's a precedent from previous applications. And I wanted to bring up fire safety, which is set out in section 4.16, page 81 of the officer report, which talks about the different elements of fire suppression, fire hydrants and emergency response plans. And lastly, the cumulative development impact, and that's mainly the landscape element of that, which is set out in paragraph 4.10.40, page 67, and the consideration of the East of Luton housing with Luton Airport and the solar farm. So I just want to draw your attention to that. Is there anything else, Ron? Cool. Thank you very much.
All right, so colleagues, before we move into debating the application, I'm mindful it's just gone, excuse me, it's just gone 9 o'clock. Do we need to take a comfort break before we move into the debate or, yeah? Yep, I'm seeing some nods. Excellent, okay. In that case, we're going to take a short adjournment, ideally 5 minutes if possible. If I could ask members of the public, please respect members of the committee. Don't approach or try and nobble them when they go outside. If there's any indication that that's happened, it's only going to come back and cause us issue in the future. Right, so colleagues, can we close the live streaming and I'll see you in 5 minutes. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you could start returning to your seats, that would be absolutely fantastic. We will be restarting the live stream very shortly. Oh yeah, I did want that. Thank you. That was my, yeah, don't leave that on the floor. Okay. Are we ready to go back live? I think that we are now back live. So if we could all resume, that would be brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay. So we've heard all of the evidence. We've had the officers summing up on this. The next stage in the procedure is for members of the committee to debate. In order to move us into the debate, I do need somebody to propose a motion of some sort. In the event that we follow the officer recommendation in this report, what we would be doing as a committee this evening is resolving to grant, and then the decision is referred up to the Secretary of State to make their final decision on, just because of the issues involved in this application and the size of it, etc., etc. So it's not a, if we are minded to approve or if someone wants to propose that, it's not a motion to approve, it's to resolve to grant the application. So does anybody want to be brave and propose a motion based on this application? I see Councillor Allen.
I will.
You will. Is that a proposal to resolve to grant or against?
For the purposes of moving on to the debate, I'll propose a resolve to grant.
Okay, so we've had a proposal to resolve to grant. Do I have a seconder? Okay, in order to move us into the debate, I am also going to second, and I will reserve my right to speak during that debate. So, colleagues, we've had a motion proposed and seconded into the debate. Anybody wishing to speak on this? Okay, Councillor Muir.
Well, I've come with an open mind. I did vote for the solar farm by the A1M at Wymley. I voted against the one in Bygrave. And listening to all the objectors and reading all the paperwork, I find that I have several points where I feel I couldn't vote for this. It's too large, too intrusive. I like to listen to the rest of the debate before I finally make up my mind.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Brown.
I think this one's quite finely balanced. I can see some really positive things about it. There have been some amendments made as a result of consultation, I believe, and some input from both the community and from officers. I'm worried about the visual impact. I'm not convinced that's been adequately addressed. I can see there are a number of things that have been given weight: greenbelt, landscape and visual impact, and heritage, and then other things that seem to be a benefit. Renewable energy generation is clearly a benefit. I believe that we need more renewable energy. It needs to be in the right place, needs to be of the right type. I don't actually agree with the CPRE argument that there's enough brownfield and rooftop space to generate the energy we need. I don't think there is. The other argument I don't really buy is that it's going into the national grid. Climate change is a global problem. We can't be parochial about it. You know, we need to make our contribution. So I don't really buy that argument. I think there's biodiversity net gain is really good on this site. It's really substantial, actually. I read there were 45 hectares of solar panels, 42 hectares of biodiversity net gain, and 10 hectares will remain arable, and that it'll provide electricity for 20,500 homes, which is substantial. I think it's a really difficult one because I think it is finely balanced, and I think the officer's report highlights that. And the officer has recommended granting, but it could easily have gone the other way, I think. The other thing that I'm concerned about is the location. I know it's not yet in an area of outstanding natural beauty, but it potentially could become one. It's right near Luton Airport. We don't know what's going to happen with Luton Airport expansion. We can't second guess that, and we can't determine it on that basis. But we do know that the east of Luton site will be developed because it's an allocated site in the local plan. So that's going to be developed. We just don't know exactly how and what yet, although that's in the master planning process. So the people in these villages have got these three substantial, and I do think the things going on, I think the cumulative impacts are considerable. Natural England haven't objected. It's a really, really difficult one. So I'm really struggling about where to come down, but I think I'm probably going to be minded to refuse. Thank you.
Any further comments or points from members? Yes, I see Councillor Tyson.
Yeah, well, I agree with Councillor Brown that this is a really sort of finely balanced application to my mind. I think, as has been said, there's been some good attempts to sort of mitigate the harms, the inevitable harms of building this sort of solar farm in a site which may not be designated as a valued landscape, but actually anyone who's been there will know that it is an area of extreme beauty and not maybe have an appropriate formal label attached to it, but actually that doesn't detract from the value of that landscape. And I know that's partly a subjective thing, but that's my opinion on it. I think that the cumulative impact of particularly the allocated housing sites, and I noticed, I think it was in the officer's report where it was mentioned that, well, that was probably not a very positive impact for the people in the area to have to put up with, but the solar farm would be another one, but they were both of different natures, so that was more acceptable because one was a horrible thing of one style and one was a horrible thing that looks a bit different. And when you add them up together, it didn't matter too much because they weren't intrusive in the same manner. Well, I don't particularly buy into that. I think that the cumulative impact is something that we can't underestimate here. So my inclination is to refuse this.
Okay, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point really that if we are to refuse, we are going to have to give a robust and legal reason to refuse, because otherwise this will go to appeal, it will probably pass, and then the development will be thrust upon us without us being able to make any recommendations or things that we would like to have make it better. That is the reality that we have here. So just want to make that point clear. And Chair, I understand we are in debate, but is there a point of which we can consider recommendations or adjustments? Would I be able to do that now?
Yep. So at this point in the proceedings, if members have any conditions or if they want to add additional informatives, that's something that we can discuss. Officers will, of course, be able to advise. And I can also ask the applicant if such an amendment or an additional condition would be acceptable to them as well.
Thank you. So my recommendation is that the fields 8 and 9 are removed from the application, as stated before, that there is a precedent set for the distance between other solar farm developments and housing, And I would like that to be same consideration being taken into account.
Okay, so Sarah, just to check, remind me, what are fields 8 and 9 being used for in the application at the moment?
So they were the fields sort of just to the right or north of Darley Wood. And that was where the pipeline started. And there was a sort of notional kind of line cutting off the solar panels so that there would be a green buffer that kind of said 130 metres minimum for sort of B&G stuff. So they're currently arable land, yeah.
So they're currently arable land,
yeah.
Anyway. So is the proposal that they are, effectively going to remain as arable land, in which case we wouldn't need to amend anything or impose a condition. It would just be maybe sort of making clear, if it's not already clear in the conditions, about that buffer and codifying that. Yeah.
It is possible with schemes to impose a condition that basically says notwithstanding the submitted layout plan, etc. This planning permission does not grant permission for a particular thing. In this case, the solar panels on those two fields, 8 and 9. It's not ideal. Normally, if you as we have done in the past, we exclude certain elements of the site from solar panels. It was done through the submission of a revised drawing. But I have seen cases where certain elements of a scheme are excluded by condition. Notwithstanding the submitted scheme, planning permission is not granted for the solar panels in fields 8 and 9.
Yeah, so effectively, I guess what Councillor Allen's asking for is a belt and braces approach to ensure that those fields are absolutely not used. And the way that we would secure that, and as other places have done, I guess as an exception, is to impose that as a condition, notwithstanding. Yeah. So
the view on the matter.
Would if the committee were minded to approve, would you accept such a condition?
I'd be keen to understand the committee's justification for suggesting such a condition, given that your own landscape and visual impact advisor hasn't identified any harm from that area. It's 130 metres from the nearest residential property, and there is a substantial tree belt between those properties and that area, such that visibility would be very limited.
Okay, Councillor Allen.
Sorry, thank you. I'd appreciate less chatter in the background. My concern isn't about necessarily just visibility. My concern is about, one, the safety aspect, which residents have a right to speak about, and that it being close to residential housing. These particular fields were pointed out specifically as being a bit too close, and just wondering if it'd be worth considering keeping that as arable land and not part of the solar farm development itself.
Okay, so I think effectively what's being said is that there's it's a goodwill condition. It's a trust, a public engagement thing, and it would make people feel safer and more secure and comfortable in the event that this application were approved, if that thing were secured by condition. Not saying that there is ever going to be a need for enforcement, because obviously everybody that works with us in North Herts is a responsible developer, aren't they? But sometimes it's handy for us to just have that little bit of security to support communities and residents in the background.
I understand. Is the concern regarding fire risk, Councillor, and batteries? Is that your concern?
So do you want to come back, Amy?
Thanks. I understand about the fire risk. I understand about the fire suppression. My husband happens to be an electrical engineer. So I do understand there is a lot of safety aspects involved in what is in place. My point is that it is close to residential areas. It's being asked that if there was to be any sort of consideration that fields 8 and 9 were to be removed because of the closeness to residential properties, and there is a precedent set for other solar farms where the distance is greater than what is the distance here between those fields 8 and 9 and the residential area in question. Does that make sense?
To be clear, there are no batteries in those fields whatsoever. So we purposefully moved the batteries further away from those properties to respond to any potential health and safety concerns. All there are solar panels. the same solar panels that, 20,000 households in North Herts have on their rooftops.
Okay. Right. I think what I'm hearing is a desire for a condition, but I'm also hearing an applicant that isn't quite willing to accept that condition at this point in time. I think Councillor Allen, you've set out concerns that were based on the presentations that residents made this evening. So I think that the committee is grateful for the contribution. Councillor Muir.
I would like to propose that we refuse this application.
Oh, it's about to get very theatrical, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? Oh, yes, it is. Right. It's not quite pantomime season, but if we can all remain good-natured, that will assist us greatly. Councillor Muir, we've currently got a motion that's been proposed and seconded. So I think effectively the best way to deal with this would be, if you're minded to refuse, to simply vote against the motion that's already been tabled. And then we could move a second one after we voted on the current motion in the event that that is necessary. Right, back to business. Where was it? There were people that had indicated and then disappeared. Councillor Mason.
Thank you. These ones are always incredibly difficult. Every time we sit in this council chamber, we talk about declaring a climate emergency. And clearly solar farms is a way that we meet that climate emergency, and that weighs extremely heavily on all of us, I think. However, every application like this has to be considered in its own merits, and I certainly heard a lot of very good reasons from members of the public, and if I was sat where you are, I'd have those concerns as well. But also weighing on our shoulders is we can't, if we were to reject this, we had to have a sound legal reason for doing so. And my nervousness is at the moment is I'm not sure I've heard a sound legal reason to reject it. And that is my nervousness around it, to be completely honest. My second point is back with conditions. And I wanted to pick up on the point that Councillor Muir said earlier about traffic movements and whatever. And I would like to propose, if we were minded to grant this, that we have a condition around restricting traffic movements, presumably in the early morning when school traffic and whatever, to at least mitigate the impact on local residents, if we were minded to grant it, of course.
Okay, so that's a condition to be added around traffic movements and times of day, notwithstanding the traffic management plan. Okay, and specifically to capture the school run and to mitigate against the amount of traffic at that point in time. So yes, Councillor Brown.
I'm conscious that I've already spoken, but I just wondered, since it's been raised twice now, about grounds for refusal, whether our officer could advise us if there are legal grounds for refusal.
I'm going to hold that point just because I want to deal with the condition that's been suggested first. Just very briefly over to the applicant, if the committee were sort of to ask for a condition that would exclude construction traffic that clashed with school run times, is that something that you would be minded to accept?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so that's one that potentially could be agreed at this point in time. I don't think members are indicating they want to comment further on that. Councillor Brown has asked a question. Are officers able to answer Councillor Brown's question?
Councillor Brown, would you like to repeat your question, please?
It's been raised a couple of times whether if we were minded to refuse, if we refuse this, is there a legal ground to refuse? And would, because several people have said there may not be legal grounds to refuse it, and I want to know if there are, if the officers consider there are legal grounds. The way I read the report is it's finely balanced, so maybe there are on grounds of visual impact, greenbelt, etc. So I just wanted to know what you think.
I have to be very careful here. I don't want to be putting words into your mouth at all. It is for you, it's for me to advise you on what the decision should be. My recommendation is that permission be granted. However, if you look at the report, we're dealing with specific areas, and the main area is greenbelt, land, and another area is landscape impact. Anything else? Those are the two main areas that where we've applied a balance and come to the view that the benefits of the proposal outweigh the impacts upon the greenbelt and upon landscape. Now, if members were to take a different view and you felt on balance that the benefits do not outweigh those impacts upon the openness of the greenbelt and the impacts upon the landscape, then you're entitled to come to that view. But as I made clear earlier, my recommendation is that planning permission be granted because the benefits outweigh those harms. But you can come to a different view on those matters.
And sort of obviously, colleagues, the relevant sections of the NPPF have been set out in the report. I think pages 48 and 49 are quite helpful on that. And we've also got comments from officers around the greenbelt, weighing up the various harms, the cumulative issues as well. And there is later on in the report at page 88, the conclusion on the renewable energy benefits. I think has been indicated by a number of people this evening. This is a finely balanced application, and we need to make sure that we are apportioning weight to matters that are relevant. And that when we set out our decision, whatever decision it is we reach tonight, that we have robust reasoning on that. And we've taken everything into account and weighed it appropriately, given the planning balance and policy statements, as well as this council's policies in the relevant areas as well. So Councillor McDonnell.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring up the subject of the limited time period of the solar farm. The 40 years starts from the time that it starts to produce electricity. So this potentially brings it to 42, 43 years, perhaps, depending on the time it takes for construction, etc., and getting it online. 40 years is just, that's not temporary. That's potentially 2/3 of somebody's lifetime. It is a long, long period of time. And that just concerns me that for some people, this is going to be their whole life living with these solar farms.
I'm going to put our planning lawyer on the spot and ask if there's a definition of temporary.
Thank you, Chair. No, to put it shortly, it's not as straightforward as that. It is temporary because it's 40 years, but on a legal basis, there isn't a specific definition. Whether there's any further comments from the planning officers, but yeah, not on a legal basis, a definition.
Yeah, so my understanding would be that we're working with the ordinary everyday meaning of the word temporary. Sean, I don't know if you've got anything further to add.
Yes, I can. 40 years is not permanent, but it is a long period of time. And therefore, in various appeal decisions that have been raised, and also in paragraph 4.8.18 of this report, we do address the matter. Because it's such a long period of time, our view is that you should give limited weight to the temporary nature of the proposal. If it was just for a few years, then you'd give the temporary nature of the proposal greater weight. So in various appeal decisions around the country, inspectors have given limited weight to the fact that it is not permanent because of its 40 years. In certain areas of consideration, it can be quite relevant. So, for example, when you're talking about impact upon heritage assets, when we're looking at heritage assets, we're looking at very much the long term and trying to preserve and conserve those heritage assets for future generations. And so, in my view, the weight you would give it in that regard could be slightly greater. But on the whole, my view is the same as those that inspectors have given, that you should give the temporary nature of it limited weight because of the length of time that it involves.
There you go. So it's temporary, but it's of limited weight when we're making our decision. So weighing the limited weight of it being temporary against other items that have been apportioned greater weight in the table that officers have provided, as well as your own views based on the evidence heard this evening. I'm going to allow Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I'm aware that I have asked a question. Well, I've requested a recommendation. If we refuse this, will it still go to the Secretary of State? And how much will it be likely to cost the council, as if their appeal does win, we would be fined? How much would that be? Because I have tried making recommendations, I think reasonable recommendations. Developers not being forthcoming. And so I would like to just clarify exactly what we are going to end up with.
So the normal process, as always, if the committee decides that it wishes to refuse a grant of a planning application, the applicant always has a right of appeal. And depending on how that appeal is dealt with, how it escalates, the length of time that is applied to it, the representation that's needed on both sides, costs that may be awarded against the council, etc., we don't know how much it's going to cost. Obviously, there was a previous solar farm application which the committee granted. Then the Secretary of State called in. The planning inspector overturned it. Then the Secretary of State decided to change his mind, and that cost us a considerable amount of money, almost £100,000 as an authority. So that kind of gives us a baseline in terms of cost. However, we do not have a crystal ball, and we're not making a decision based on whether or not we're likely to be appealed. What we're making our decision on this evening, colleagues, is the evidence that's been presented to us, and weighing up the planning balance and the likelihood, the risk, etc., of an appeal is not something that sits within the planning balance. What we do this evening is reach a robust decision, and then whatever happens from there happens. Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, I'm also finding it quite difficult to make a decision on this one. And a lot of people referred to the fact that there's a lot of solar farms going in North Hertfordshire at the moment. I just wondered how much we are actually generating, and do we actually have more than other areas in the country? Do we need to add to this?
I'm going to ask Sean if you can come back on that and just sort of obviously be relatively careful as well.
Yes. There was a fairly long period of time where we had no applications for solar farms, and then we had 2 applications for solar farms back in, I think, 2013 and 2015 for very small solar farms, one near Reed and another near Kings Walden. And then we had 4 solar farm applications pretty much all submitted at the same time. So it does appear that we're inundated with applications for solar farms, but on the whole, the number of solar farm applications that we've had is not disproportionate compared to many other areas of the country. I think what is a little bit different is that we've had them all at the same time.
Okay, I'm not seeing anyone else indicating that they want to speak on the debate. I think we've covered quite a bit of ground. I have been sharing. I have not expressed my view or opinion on this particular application, and I will refrain from doing so for the time being. So, added for time, nobody's indicating. I think we might be at the point where we're moving towards a vote, colleagues. So, a proposal has been tabled that we resolve to grant this application, and that proposal has also been seconded. Could we please move to a vote on that, James?
Yeah, that motion is lost.
Right. Okay, so I guess then this might be the time Councillor Muir, would you like to make any other proposal? Do you want to take centre stage?
Yes, thank you. On the result of that vote, I think now we should have an official vote on refusal.
If the committee is minded to refuse, of course, we do need sort of robust reasonings for this. Clearly, we have just voted on not granting it. Do I have anyone wishing to second Councillor Muir's proposal? Councillor Brown.
Do we need another vote? We do. Okay, in which case I will happily second. Thank you.
Are you reserving your right? I do need, colleagues, some planning reasons for refusal. Now, I can attempt to hash these out, but I do like to take them from the floor and be democratic. Councillor Mantle.
That was the point I was going to make, and I was asking the proposer and seconder of the proposal before us what grounds they are proposing the refusal.
It's a very, very good point. Now, Michael, you did propose it, so I'll give you first refusal before we launch into things.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's far too large. I know this land, and it will be destroying valuable farmers' land for growing crops. It's good farming land, and I think that would be a good enough reason to refuse.
Okay, thank you. I hear what you're saying. However, I also know that this is going to be counteracted by the points around the installation being temporary, etc., etc. So I'm not necessarily convinced that those are the planning reasons that we're looking for. Councillor Brown.
I would like to refuse it on grounds of visual impact and landscape and green that's in the green belt. And to the point about it being temporary, technically 40 years is a very long time. I don't see it as temporary development in the greenbelt. I see it as semi-permanent, or at least a substantial chunk of someone's lifetime. So those would be my main reasons. I know that heritage assets was also identified, but for me, it's the greenbelt and the landscape and visual impact that matters the most.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing effectively is that there's a view emerging that this is not that this is an inappropriate development within the green belt, and the committee is not convinced that there are very special circumstances demonstrated. And in doing so, the committee has had regard to the visual impact, having considered the site layout, the proposed usage of the fields, reviewing the photographs that we've seen from officers this evening, as well as the evidence and testimony provided by residents. And there is reference back as well to the heritage impact, although that's not been substantive in Councillor Brown's reasoning. I note that that was apportioned moderate to high weight by officers in the report. Balanced against this, Councillor Brown has identified that the temporary aspect indeed only has limited weight to be applied to it when we're considering the planning balance, and therefore the committee seems to believe that that is not sufficient to outweigh the substantial harms in respect of the greenbelt points, visual impact, landscape, etc. Do you colleagues have any additional planning reasons that they want to build into what we've already got? I'm going to go to Councillor Allen first.
I was actually just going to contribute to the point about the rejection being around my reasonable recommendations not being taken into consideration. It is a large site. I'm aware of the safety elements and that the fire safety is robust, but the two fields are too close to the residential areas. I thought that was a very reasonable request. Thank you.
Okay, so what I'm also hearing, as well as the harms that have been identified, is that there's a potential issue with with the amenity and the closeness to existing communities and the impacts there. I think some of this does link into the visual and landscape aspects. And I think that the committee noted the applicant's response when Councillor Allen proposed or suggested a condition, and the committee has clearly taken a view in respect of the way that the applicant responded to that request, which may or may not affect the committee's confidence. However, that's clearly not something that's material or would directly impact. It's more about the visual impacts and the landscape effects at this point in time. Councillor Tyson.
Can we also add loss of public amenity in terms of the public rights of way being fenced in and enclosed in a way that may detract from their appeal to their users? And is it also possible to include something about the cumulative impact of the allocated sites?
Yeah, so I think you've picked up on the point that I've been holding on to around the rights of way. I am concerned about that. It's difficult because obviously officers aren't necessarily able and haven't provided us with a survey or sort of desk-based evidence, etc., in the same ways we receive highways reports about the usage of those rights of way. So we are reliant on the comments that have been submitted by the objectors, the evidence that we've heard this evening around the usage of those rights of way as well. But I am particularly concerned that we have got signposted, utilised rights of way that ordinary members of the public, dog walkers, the community, people travelling from pubs to, what's that? Get rid of that. People travelling from pubs, village to village, etc., have been used to utilising, which will now become enclosed in this space. There's currently no lighting in that space anyway, but we are fundamentally changing the layout of that space. And I haven't heard anything from the applicant this evening that persuades me that the approach that is being taken is going to be compliant with emerging policies at this council around the safety of our communities, in particular in respect of women and girls. And I did make a suggestion around stud lighting, and I'm somewhat dismayed that wasn't picked up on, and the points that were being hinted at in that space weren't taken forward. Some of this will be material and relevant to this application, of course, and some of it won't be, and we will weigh it appropriately. It's just another thing to add alongside the points that have already been raised on this particular application. Do colleagues have any other points that they want to add in respect of reasons to refuse before I pass over to our planning officers to comment on the reasons that the committee has discussed so far? Councillor Brown.
The only other thing, and I'll take officers' advice on this, is the urgent local need. We've heard that the energy will be used elsewhere. Personally, I don't, as I said, I don't think where it's generated and where it goes to is particularly relevant, because I think we need more renewable energy everywhere and it's a global problem. But I noticed that urgent local need as a benefit has been awarded very substantial weight. So that's why I'm just questioning that.
Okay, so I think that's a point to hold on to and come back to with everything else. Councillor Billing.
I was also going to make the point of it being potentially not designed the way that a lot of people would like, from comments, having, as Amy mentioned, we wanting to suggest things and the applicant not listening to those suggestions, and maybe it could be something that could be worked on maybe in the future to have more than 2 interactions with the public, because I think that's what I heard, is that there was 2 sit downs with the public and there wasn't anything else on top of that.
Yeah. Anybody that said anything from the back row, the committee isn't taking that into account. Anything that you may or may not have heard, you didn't just hear. Community engagement, I think, when we're dealing with planning applications that come to this council, is absolutely key. And I would encourage all applicants to ensure that when they are bringing proposals forward, they are engaging legitimately and meaningfully with communities. That means listening to feedback, taking points on board and working with people in order to ensure that we have well-designed spaces, facilities, amenity and infrastructure in this district. Not necessarily not a planning reason or a reason that we can refuse this, but it is very much a point that really ought to be noted by all applicants and ought to be noted by applicants if they don't get the outcome that they're hoping for at a particular planning committee. And I know that there are a number that do go away and do take on board the points that our committee has raised in order to improve and enhance their applications in future. Right, so I think then in summary, colleagues, we've got the visual impact, the landscape, the concern that this application hasn't sufficiently demonstrated that there are very special circumstances for the land to be removed from the green belt, and the committee is feeling that the planning balance isn't quite tipped in favour of the application. So based on what you've heard in this segment of the debate, can I pass over to Sarah and Sean for any comments and suggestions and guidance?
From what members have just said, it appears that they are not convinced that there are very special circumstances. We're talking about Greenbelt now. Very special circumstances that arise from the benefits from this development that clearly outweighs the harm to the Greenbelt and any other harm. And therefore, members consider that the proposal conflicts with policy SP5 of the local plan, which basically says we will support the principles of the Greenbelt and will only permit development proposals in the Greenbelt where they would not result in inappropriate development or where very special circumstances have been demonstrated. So members consider that very special circumstances haven't been demonstrated and therefore consider that it conflicts with policy SP5 of the local plan. With regards to the concerns raised about impacts upon the landscape, we have a policy NE2 in the local plan, which deals with this particular matter. That policy says planning permission will be granted for development proposals that, amongst other things, respect the sensitivities of landscape character and do not cause unacceptable harm to the character and appearance of the surrounding landscape. Members have expressed an opinion that they consider that there would be unacceptable harm to the character and appearance of the surrounding area and landscape character, and therefore that the proposal would conflict with policy NE2 of the local plan. Yes, we also have a policy NE12, which deals specifically with renewable energy proposals. Just bear with me. And policy NE12 says that proposals for solar farms involving the best and most versatile agricultural land, which this application does, proposals for renewable energy and low carbon energy development, which would contribute towards reducing greenhouse gases, will be permitted, provided, amongst other things, that landscape quality, landscape character and visual amenity, including consideration of cumulative impacts of development. And so members consider that the requirements of policy NE12 have also not been complied with for the reasons that you've stated.
Thank you very much. So members, I think we've covered off everything. Does anyone have any final points to make on this before I move us over to a vote? No. So there's been Councillor Allen.
You're about to say exactly what I'm about to ask. Could we have absolutely clarify exactly what we are voting for? Thank you.
So there has been a proposal that we refuse to resolve to grant this application. That proposal has been seconded, and therefore we are voting to resolve to refuse the grant of this application. Okay, everybody's clear what's being voted on?
Sorry, Chair, just before we go, can I just clarify? It is yes to refuse. So you're voting yes to refuse, yeah?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. So vote yes to refuse, vote no to not refuse, vote abstain to abstain. All right. That was an obvious one, wasn't it? Yes. Okay, lovely. So can we have a vote, please, James? Oh, I don't know.
Chair, that motion is carried.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that means that at this point in time, the application is refused. I trust the applicant has. Thank you. I trust the applicant has heard what's been said in this chamber tonight. Okay. Statements that I might make if this was a licensing hearing, I won't make because it's a planning committee. However, you've heard the comments, and it might not be the end of things. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time. Given that there's a large number of people who have observed this section of the meeting, before we move on to the next segment, I'm going to allow us to take a 5-minute adjournment just so that those who wish to leave the chamber are able to do so. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. We're just going to restart the live stream and then we'll crack on. There we go. Thank you very much for bearing with us. Okay, so I will move us on now, colleagues, to the next item. As I said at the start, we're going to take the full permissions application for Oakley Farm first, because that seems to make more sense than taking the variation. So this is agenda item number 8, which is application 23/02719/FP, land at Oakley Farm, Codicott Road, Welwyn, Hearts, AL6 9TY. Andrew Hunter, would you like to present your report, please?
Thank you, Chair. There is one update or some updates which are set out in an updates document, which is on the committee agenda page of the website, which reflects recent comments from the lead local flood authority that they have no objections to the application. If I can go on to the slides now, please. So here is the site location plan. A brief description of it is that it consists of an access road leading to an area of now demolished industrial storage and equestrian buildings, and a still used open air area of open air storage land, which are in the north of the site. There are various levels changes throughout the site, with it levels being highest in the north and the southwest area where the access is. Approximately one third of the site is in our district, and the other 2/3 is in the Welwyn Hatfield borough area, and the whole site is in the green belt. And on that site plan, that shows the boundary between ourselves and Welwyn Hatfield by a line which sort of cuts diagonally through the top northwestern area and then continues down to the southeast. And it also shows the footprints of the now yeah, that shows the area that's now been cleared of the buildings. If we go on to the next slide, please. This is the whole proposed site plan, and with the 7 new proposed dwellings in the top left northwest corner, and the development is set out in detail in more detail in the officer report. Next slide, please. This shows the various types of hard surfacing proposed. Next, please. This shows a clearer plan of the access road and adjoining footpath from Codicott Road to the dwellings. Next slide. This shows proposed details of planting around the area of the new dwellings. Next slide. Elevations and floor plans of plots 1 and 3, with plot 1 being the northwest corner, and plot 3 is east of plot 1. Next slide. The garage outbuilding for proposed for plot 1. Next slide. The garage outbuilding proposed for plot 3. Next one. This is the elevations for plot 2, which is southeast of plot 1. Next one. The plot 4 elevations, which is southeast of plot 2. Next one. The plots 5 and 6 elevations, which are south and southeast of plot 4. Next one. A garage and carport for both plots 5 and 6. And next one, plot 7 elevations, which is southwest of plot 6. Next one, an artist impression of the area focusing on the dwellings. And next one, these are proposed. These are details of proposed boundary treatments, including gates. And if we go on to the photos next, please. So this is looking at the site entrance on Codicott Road, and you can see the existing access drive is in the centre, which then slopes down, and number 85 Codicott Road is visible on the left. And next photo. This is at the bend of the access road where it goes north. And at this time, the buildings that the previous buildings, as you can see, are remaining and will be visible in some other photos. Next one, please. This is a more recent view of the northwest of the site with the buildings now demolished. And next one, it's looking further to the east. And next one, this is looking northeast towards the open storage area, which is towards the back of the photo. Next one, this is facing east with the storage area and part of the rest of the site on the left. Next one, this is a closer view of the northwest of the site. Next one, this is facing more to the north boundary. Next photo, that's northeast, looking further northeast, showing more of the back of that part of the site. And last photo, this is facing the northeast part of the site with the open storage area on the right side. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Do colleagues have any points of clarification for Andrew? Yes, Councillor Brown.
Thank you. I noticed in your report you described this as previously developed land. Can I ask, are there any permanent structures on that site at all?
Not that I could see from the site visits, but so the MPPF definition of previously developed land can include land that is or was occupied by a permanent structure. So that's sort of where that comes from. So
But there's currently no permanent structure on that site?
No.
Okay, thank you.
That's right.
Thank you. Councillor Mantle.
Thank you. In your presentation, you showed some gates. Where were the gates in relation to the site? Where were the gates for?
The proposed gates, did you mean?
The ones you showed, you said there were some gates and some fences on the picture.
They are proposed around the area of the dwellings with one set of gates just sort of at the entrance to the main to where essentially where the group of dwellings begin, and the rest of them are sort of proposed for each of the individual dwellings at the essentially the end of their driveways.
Would it assist if we pulled the boundary treatment slide back up just to walk through that? I've got a version open that's on the portal, but you have to go through a lot of pages to get to it.
If it's possible, it would be helpful.
Yeah.
Maybe cycle through the plans.
Yeah, and then maybe if you want to take us through kind of like not necessarily gate by gate, because I think when we get to a certain point it's self-evident, but maybe sort of explain the main gate and the closed board fences, etc.
Okay, so the gates are proposed to be sort of like open metal rail gates, which would also include gate posts, and there would also the fences and the brick walls and the railings relate to the boundary treatments proposed for the dwellings themselves, which would be within that northwestern residential part of the site.
I think that's a boundary treatment slide. It's the one that's got the sketches of the gates. Oh. One. Yep, that's the right one. There we go. Lovely. Okay, so because it's a sort of a hand sketch for some of these, and it's quite small on the screen, I think the gates that are on the top right, that's the main gate. So you've got obviously a vehicle gate and then a pedestrian gate at the side of that. The vehicle gate is fob controlled, I think, isn't it, Andrew? And the pedestrian gate is left unlocked for access.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep. So that's the main gate to the site. So that would be the main access point. And then there's the other gates that are of a similar style, but look to be manually operated for each of the individual plots. And then we've got closed board fence, brick screen, dwarf wall with railings.
Yeah, my concern is that we've always set our sights against gated communities, and it sounds as if we're actually going to, or being asked to give permission to a gated community against all policies and all previous decisions. That was why I raised the issue.
Okay, I think that's a point to note, and possibly something that we might wish to discuss with the applicant later on. Yep. Okay, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Hunter, in 4.3.12, it says highways have not responded. Do you know maybe any further information on that, or maybe why they haven't responded? Because I have concerns regarding byway safety, road safety, because this is, as I understand it, a heavily used equestrian area.
Sorry, what was the paragraph you referred?
4.3.12. Hang on.
4.3.12, that.
1.2, sorry, yeah. Am I looking at the right?
I think, are you on the agenda item 7 or 8, Councillor Allen? Just because I've got a different 4.3.1.2.
You swapped them round, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so we're taking the full permission first. So hold on to that point for the next item if we need it. Lovely. Councillor Fernandez.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to ask about the access road to the site. So obviously the gate is going to be there's going to be a gate from Codicott Road onto the site. Is that right?
No, there's no, there wouldn't be a gate just at the access. It's proposed to be much further round.
Around the road.
Much close, basically where the houses are.
Right, okay. And also the access road is very long. Who's going to be maintaining this? Is this been adopted or is it a private road?
There is a condition recommended by the Highway Authority. I'll just find it, requiring full details of for the future management and maintenance of the streets, and so it could potentially be a privately maintained road.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brown.
I hope this is not a trivial question, but I've never come across a cross-boundary site like this, and I just wanted to know: does the boundary of the districts go through any particular building, or are they all one side or the other? And what happens about bin collections, for example?
There we go. I think that might is that one for Sean?
Well, that's a very good question. I'm not involved in bin collections myself, but it may well be that bins will be collected from those houses that are in our district, from our waste provider, and those in Welling from the other. But I don't really know, to be honest, because I don't get involved in those matters. It is odd that the boundary is where it is. From a planning viewpoint, an application has been submitted to us that includes all the houses in Welling, and an application has been submitted to Welling that includes the houses in our district, and we consider the whole application, basically, despite the fact that most of it is actually in Welling rather than in our district. But as to who will be responsible for bins, there may well be an agreement at some point as to who does that. The access is in our district, I believe, so it may well be we collect it, but I don't really know.
Okay, and just sort of picking up and following on from Ruth's point, obviously there's two applications being considered by two authorities. Do we have sight of what Welling has decided or its process in respect of decision making?
They haven't made a decision at this point.
And is that likely to be via committee, delegated decision?
We've told delegated.
Delegated. Okie dokie. Right. Any further questions for officers, colleagues? Nope. Okie dokie. Cool. So I have got registered on this one objector, which is Ros Naylor, and I've also got Councillor Stephen Patmore as well. So I'm going to go to Ros first. As there's just you get an entire 5 minutes.
Thank you. As a resident in the area and as an equestrian in the area, and also a representative of the British Horse Society Hearts Access Committee, I would like to see what provisions will be made on the impact of extra traffic in the area on an already overloaded highway system where equestrians are overlooked in terms of safety. I have lived here for 24 years and ridden on the road network in and around Codicut, and it is getting ever more dangerous. I regularly have to cross the B656, the Codicut Road, on horseback, either from my road, which is Reynards Road, or coming from Danesbury Park Road and going to or from Fulling Mill Lane. These crossing points are just along from this particular development. Too many vehicles do not respect riders. I note there has not been a report done by Herts County Council Highways on the safety aspect of vulnerable road users surrounding this development. Horse riders and carriage drivers are considered to be vulnerable road users by the government and should always be considered together with walkers and cyclists. It is not just this road, the B656, that will suffer, but the single track lanes that surround this scheme. I would like to see the improvement of road safety by providing additional horse warning signs and Pegasus crossings, potentially, along with a speed camera in this area. It is not only myself that rides these routes, as there are two very large livery yards in the area and many private equestrian yards that also use this road as a crossing point. One of the livery yards is Lindsay's Farm near Welling, and the other one is Welling Equestrian at Potters Heath. The amount of house building, either finished or under construction in the last year, just in Codicut alone, is roughly 325 dwellings. At a conservative estimate, that is an extra 650 cars on the B656 and the surrounding lanes, not including work vans and delivery drivers. Within the last 3 months, the BHS, the British Horse Society, carried out a survey amongst the local horse riders and horse-drawn carriage drivers to this proposed development, which showed that 86% had suffered vehicles passing them too fast, 66% too close, and 73% had suffered vehicles aggressively driving towards them. Since the government states that cyclists, walkers and equestrians are vulnerable road users, I would like to see this council and the Herts County Council Highways Office to act on this, to make the roads around this development safe. These new crossing speed cameras will not only benefit equestrians, but also cyclists and walkers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've got an extra minute and a half if you've got anything else you want to go into.
My life. No, I'm joking.
It's nearly 10:30. As much as I like a good therapy session, we're going to crack on then. Right, colleagues, do we have any questions? No questions. I think you've made the points very well. So we shall move on to Councillor Stephen Patmore, who's acting as a member advocate. So over to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. When this application was originally submitted, both NHDC, Welling Hatfield Borough Council refused the planning permission. However, this was overturned on appeal by the planning inspectorate in September 2021. Since then, a lot has changed, including the fact that North Hertfordshire now has an adopted local plan, as well as a district we have a 5-year land supply. The reason for refusal put forward by NHDC a number of years ago were as follows. The purpose of the development constitutes an inappropriate development in the Greenbelt and causes harm to the openness of the Greenbelt. In addition to the harm by reason of inappropriateness, other harm is identified in relation to one of the purposes of including Greenbelt land and the impact of the character and the appearance of the area. By harm by the reason of inappropriateness and the other harm identified, it is not clearly outweighed by the other material planning consideration, such to constitute as a very special circumstance necessary to permit inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. I would argue those grounds are applicable to this application, and I therefore would ask this committee to refuse permission on the basis that the application is contrary to the policies SP1, SP2, SP5 and D1 of the local plan and sections 12 and 13 of the National Planning Framework. The application before the committee has a number of key differences to which the planning inspectorate allowed in 2021. Most notably, the fact that the properties proposed are large both by volume and size. This means the impact they will have on the Greenbelt landscape and local environment would be greater. This was highlighted by Codicut Parish Council, who also opposed this development. Although this application involves just 7 houses and it represents a continued erosion of the Greenbelt surrounding Codicut, furthering development creep and infill between Codicut and Welling, something that the Greenbelt is designed to prevent. The decision of the planning inspector was, of course, made well before the local plan inspector's report of September 2022, which gave permission for 4 major housing developments immediately surrounding the Codicut villages. That would be CD1, CD2, CD3 and CD5, totaling nearly 400 new homes. It would therefore be inappropriate and of significant concern if the Oakley Farm development were to be considered in isolation from this totality of the new developments around Codicut. Members will be familiar with policy CD1 of the local plan, more commonly known as Cowards Lane site, as this committee granted permission for development of 80 homes when it met on Thursday, the 13th of June. At that meeting, my ward colleague, Councillor Munzer, highlighted the significant concerns surrounding the lack of appropriate infrastructure for Codicut in order to avail the issues associated with the development of over 400 new homes in the village. I wish to echo these concerns and highlight the fact that the proposed development you're considering this evening contributes nothing by way of infrastructure to support Codicat, even though it will even add to the pressures that the village already faces. Therefore, I respectfully ask that the committee refuse permission to this application for the reasons that I've set out, and allowing for protection of our greenbelt, as well as not adding to the pressures faced by our community without adequate mitigation.
Thank you very much. Do you colleagues have any questions for Councillor Patmore? Nope. Okay, right. I shall then move us on to hear from the applicant. So I have, make sure I'm looking at the right cast list. There we go. Turn the page, find it. There we go. Yes. Do we have I do not have an applicant present this evening. So I'm not going mad. I don't have it. Did we have the applicant registered to speak? Today, constitutionally, is there any reason why I can't ask the applicant to speak? Because if they're here, it would feel somewhat. Sorry?
I thought we changed the constitution to say that the applicant is automatically registered. Am I wrong about that?
I'm not going to go into a constitutional debate at 10:32.
No, but I was just going to ask.
I think that's a point for us to take away. I'm hearing officer concerns that if I allow the applicant to speak, that sets a precedent. What I am therefore going to do is say quite clearly that for the effective operation of this committee, we do expect people that wish to come and present and speak to register in accordance with the procedure. It makes things run much smoother. It means that we know who we're expecting on the night and we can organise and plan effectively. However, given that the applicant has been present for the entire meeting, sat through a very contentious and involved solar panel debate, and it seems somewhat unfair to have put them through that and then at 10:30 at night turn them away on a technicality that I do expect everybody to follow in future. I will, as an absolute exception on this one and only occasion, allow the applicant to speak and to make a 5-minute presentation. I absolutely stress that in future I expect all speakers to register in accordance with the Constitution. And if councillors are minded to change the Constitution, that's a process we're outside of this meeting. So, James, can you sort the mics? So before I go to you, I'm just going to pick up Councillor Billing.
I'm just very mindful of the fact that I don't want to break the Constitution. I know obviously you have just given them, the way to speak, but whether we actually maybe look to defer this and have it put through correctly so we can actually hear it better. I don't know. I just don't know.
No. I'm going to exercise chair's discretion on this one. And if the monitoring officer wants to shout at me afterwards, then the monitoring officer can shout at me appropriately at that point in time. But I think just from a general fairness and good decision making perspective, I think it's only right and proper that we hear from the applicant at this meeting. So I shall pass over. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to me. Yes, we bought this site with planning of 7 dwellings, and we're a small company, and we always look to achieve a better design in everything that we try and do. It's a greenbelt land, and we thought we could uplift the design of the dwellings that were achieved on that site, not in size, just in design. And we've carried out, I thought we could just make amendments to the design, but however, there was a few indications they had single garages that just didn't bring themselves to a cottage design. We've created a lot of timber on the buildings, and obviously incorporated the timber garages. Because of that, they're going to be all clay tiles. They're going to be the Flemish brickwork, which is for the old sort of dwellings that you'd actually see in that area. And to try and keep the design where it is, there's a certain couple of so we didn't actually make the houses any bigger. The volume becomes from the garages, and that's only incorporating a double garage, just to make it look nice. We've sort of brought garages together to make them like a semi-detached, if you like, just to create a nice old design. We've had to create the biodiversity which is coming now. We've planted 50 trees. We've created 934% of hedgerows improvements. We've done 44% on habitat, and obviously we're so aware of the green belt. That's what we do. We're a small company, as I say, a family run business, that really just is trying to achieve something nice in this area. We understand that there was a lot of people that didn't want the planning in the first place, and obviously the appeal won that through. We bought after that. We bought that dwelling with planning. All we've done is trying to improve it and uplift it, so it had extant permission, and we just really all the boundary treatment that you see is the things that you'd see in a farm. There's still 45 acres around that's remaining as paddocks, and long be seen that carries on. And I know the farmer there is willing to do it. The buildings were in a bad state, and they needed to come down. They weren't fit for purpose, to be honest, and dangerous. So that was the point where we took them down. We're sort of ready to go, really, but it's been a hard task, and obviously we spent a lot of money, over 100,000 on getting planning that we didn't know we were going to do when we bought the land. So it's been expensive for us, and we just need to see this through, and obviously we will do. And I'm hoping that you approve the scheme due to the new design of it. It's not anything that's any different to what was put out and approved by the inspector in the first place. We just feel passionate about it, and want to carry it through. And I understand all the implications around development, and we'd like to get this one through, and hope you vote for approval. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So colleagues, any questions? Yes, Councillor Brown.
Thank you. If we were to refuse this application tonight, would you build the original one?
Oh, sorry. I would have to. I wouldn't like to, due to the design of the houses, and it's not to do with, it's just the look of the old drawings were wrong. All we've done is soften the approach, and made them better, made them look better. It's a shame that if you can probably put that picture up, it shows you how we tried to soften the area, and the single garages just were in the wrong just in the middle of nowhere. They weren't really doing anything, didn't give any benefit to any a view that you'd have there. So yeah, I wouldn't like to, but I would have to.
Okay. Councillor Tyson.
Yeah, sorry, I think you said this and I missed it. Are you just confirming that the only difference in the scale, the size of the buildings, which I think the officer's report says was 23% bigger than the extent permission, is through the increase in size of the garages? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Any further questions for the applicant? Yes, Councillor Fernandez.
Am I right in, does one of the garages have accommodation over?
It does. We showed it that there's a garage to the west corner, and it's basically, to be honest, it's hiding the carport garage. There's a big commercial area to the it's just covers that a little bit. So it's the design again.
Thank you.
Okay, right. I'm not seeing colleagues indicate that they have any further questions that they want to ask the applicant. So I'm going to pass back over to officers to sum up. I think, Andrew, if you want to go first, and then I might refer to Sean just to pick on some of the policy points that were raised.
Thank you, Chair. I think the main point I want to make is that the allowed appeal from 2021 is still extant and could be built out. Still, the expiry date of that decision is September of this year, around the 29th. And if that was built out, I think you have, and we give significant weight to that. And the current scheme is going to be comparable or fairly comparable, certainly in terms of traffic impacts, because the number of dwellings are the same. Then in terms of the green belt, as officers, we consider that there are very special circumstances to support this scheme, which are set out in more detail in the report. I think those are the there haven't been any objections to the proposal from the county highways officer as well. So I think I couldn't personally see any reason to object on highway safety or traffic grounds or such impacts. I think that's all I will say on that. Thanks.
Thank you. And Sean, I think that Councillor Patmore raised a number of policies contained in the local plan. Could you just sort of run us through those? I had SP1, SP2, SP5, and sorry, was it B1 or one of the other? I couldn't find a B1. D1. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think the main policy that relates to this site is SP5, which relates to development in the Greenbelt. In terms of SP1, that's the overarching policy regarding the location of development. Let me just bring that up. Just bear with me. But before I mention the policies, I'd just like to go back and talk about the fallback position that is offered by the previously allowed scheme on appeal. I note from the evidence that the applicant has demolished the existing buildings, and through demolition of the existing buildings is commenced the implementation of that approved development, and therefore that permission lasts in perpetuity now. So it will not expire in September. That permission now lasts in perpetuity. So that's the fallback position against which to assess this proposal, this scheme that was approved on appeal. With regards to SP1, that's a policy that basically seeks to achieve sustainable development in North Hertfordshire and identifies the key settlements and the general approach to that. As I said, SP5, SP2 follows on from that and sets out the settlement hierarchy. And then SP5 deals with development in the Greenbelt, and this site is in the Greenbelt. As far as officers are concerned, the proposal complies with SP5 because we agree with the applicant that there are very special circumstances in this case. The fallback position is the main consideration. There is planning permission for 7 dwellings, and this proposal remains for 7 dwellings. There'll be no material increase in terms of traffic generated by the proposal compared to that previously approved. The main benefit, which in my view constitutes very special circumstances, is actually the uplift in the design. The design is significantly improved over that was allowed on appeal. The introduction of more traditional design features such as the external chimney stacks, whereas the original scheme had a false chimney stuck on top of a roof, for example. Things like that, and a nice plinth, a traditional plinth along the bottom of the houses, the use of higher quality materials than those that are previously approved. So at the end of the day, we get a much more enhanced scheme. There would be an increase in volume, but to the eye, that volume would not be noticeable because it, as the applicant said, it relates mainly to the enlarged garages, which are more traditional design, and that enlargement is part and parcel of that enhancement in the design of the scheme. Thank you.
And policy D1 concerns sustainable design. Yeah. I don't think we need to expand further on that at this point. Okay. So, colleagues, we've heard from everybody that's providing evidence to us on this one. So I'm going to move us into debate. Could I have a proposer of a motion to approve, refuse or defer the application? Golly gosh, 3 people almost simultaneously. Right. Councillor Brown got in first.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to propose that we grant, and the reason for that is that there is already permission. Personally, I don't agree that it's previously developed land, and I would love it to remain as a green belt. But I think that ship has already sailed. There is already permission on this land, and this is clearly a better proposal in terms of design. So I think I would like to propose we grant. I would like a condition, though. I'm not really very keen on gated communities. Could we remove the gates? Are we allowed to condition that or not?
Yes, we can impose a condition that says that notwithstanding the submitted details, planning permission is not granted for the proposed gates.
Thank you.
Are you talking about the gates to the individual dwellings or the gates to the entrance?
The entrance.
Yes.
I don't like gated communities.
Okay. Yeah,
And I think as Councillor Mantle rightly pointed out, it's against our policies.
And we've got an opportunity to ask the applicant if he's amenable to such a condition as well.
Yes, and could we fix the gates open?
Well,
It'd just be like a timber stock gate.
Councillor Brown.
Well, the trouble is someone can then shut it, can't there, if there's a gate? Why do we need a gate at all?
A compromise would be to retain gate posts, of course, with no gate on them.
Yes, okay.
To show an end, you've arrived to the site, basically.
I'd be happy with that. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. So I've had a motion proposed, which hasn't yet been seconded. So I'm going to look for a seconder first. I've got people that have lit up microphones, so I'll do a show of hands. Fastest hand first. Who wants to second the motion? Oh, Michael's already done lots of work tonight, so I'm going to give it to Councillor Allen. Yes, you seconding.
I am seconding, Chair, and reserving my right to speak.
Excellent. Okay. Now I've got to try and remember whose lights went on first and wanted to potentially speak on this. I'll go to Michael first.
Thank you, Chair. I think what we've seen from the applicant is a vast improvement on what's been granted before in design. So I'm very happy that we would pass this.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tyson, did you wanted to say anything?
No, just very briefly to say that I agree with what's been said before.
Okay, excellent. Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Mantle first.
It's only a quick question. Am I right that Councillor Brown's proposal to condition the removal of the entrance gate is part of the proposal before us?
Yes,
Ah, okay.
and I believe that the applicants accepted that as well.
did,
So yeah.
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 Just making sure there's no ambiguity.
Yeah, no, that's going to be part of the proposal. Councillor Allen?
Thank you, Chair. So what I'm hearing in all of this is that we've got a small developer changing up the layout of a plan that was already in place anyway. So there was a development that was going to happen. It does look like it's a lot better. The concerns over from the public is predominantly about road safety and highway safety, and I'm thinking about byways and such, but that is not a condition I believe that we can actually put upon this developer or this development because of the size of it. Thank you, Sean. And so I think that's something that's going to have to come up in the future with working with highways. So I'm inclined to vote with this, with noting that I'm going to try and help with the road safety bit.
Lovely, no worries. Councillor Fernandez, you were on and then off again.
Really,
When it turns red.
sorry, the same as Councillor Allen about the road safety concerns specifically because there's so much equestrian traffic around there. If there was anything that could be done to try and improve the safety for them, that would be great. But I don't know whether this is the time or the place.
Yeah, so we did actually receive a response from the highways officer. Let me try and find it. It came in on the 9th of April, and highways has sort of set out some sort of suggested conditions and some notes in there, but I can't see sort of quickly scrolling through that they have picked up those safety concerns. And it's unfortunate that we've lost our highways officer, although he might not have been dealing with this specific issue. So there might be just general points for us to feed back to County Council in that area, and a bit more working and linking in through the community with district councillors, working with County Council colleagues as well to try and enhance the safety in general in that area. So I'm afraid if this is approved, it's likely to be an ongoing campaign. Equally, if this wasn't approved, you're still going to have a campaign because there's still a planning permission there. Right. My only point that I would raise if I was going to be really, really, really awful and finicky is just a general comment about building houses with working fireplaces and chimneys, etc., given this place that we're at environmentally. However, I feel that would be a really horrible thing to put to the applicant. So I'm just going to leave that as a general point and a statement to be noted. We have declared a climate emergency, and we do have policies around sustainability. There's a draft sustainability planning document that is going to be working its way forward as well. So I would hope that applicants, especially large developers, bear that in mind when they're bringing things forward and ensure that we are building homes that are sustainable and environmentally responsible for the future. But no, I think thank you very much. I think colleagues have said everything that they need to say during the debate. Nobody else is indicating. We've had a proposal to grant this application subject to the condition notwithstanding in respect of the gates, which the applicant has accepted. So colleagues, I'm going to ask you to vote either for or against or to abstain on that. Could we have a vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Brings us on then backwards to agenda item number 7, which is the variation of condition 2 in respect of the land at Oakley Farm. Andrew, do you want to present your report on the variation?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So there are some updates which are set out in an updates document, which again is on the committee agenda page of the website, which reflects recent comments from the local flood authority and the County Council Highways officer, stating that they have no objections to the application. So if we can go on to the slides, please. So the site plan is we've seen before. If we go on to the next one, the overall proposed layout, but this shows the northern dwellings and the new paddock, which are unchanged from the 2020 application allowed on appeal, and the proposed development in terms of the alterations to the access and the road in are set out in more detail in the report. Next plan, please. This is a more a closer up view of the works to the alterations to the access onto Collycott Road. Next plan. This shows proposed hard surfacing. Next plan. This shows soft landscaping and planting around the access road area. And next plan. Details of new entrance features, low-level lighting, and timber posts, which would extend, of which the lighting and the timber posts would extend along the access road. And onto the photos then, please. So this is again at the site entrance. And next one. That's slightly just inside the site, looking down. Number 85 Collycott Road is on the left. Next one. Again, further down, about halfway along that track. Next one. Closer view of Oakley Farm at the top, in the middle. Next one. The bend of the access road looking northwest. Next one. Further up the access road. Next one. That's a view of the previously existing buildings. And next one. Looking northeast. And next one. So this one and the next three are ones that were shown in the presentation for the last item, so you can move through them. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Do you colleagues have any questions or points of clarification for Andrew? Nope. Okay. All right. So I also have both Ros Naylor and Councillor Patmore registered to speak against this. Do you wish to speak on it? Nope. Thank you very much. That's very helpful. And also, as I have the applicant here, I'll just double check. Do you want to speak on the variation? No. Thank you very much. We didn't ask questions on the variation of the parties in the first application that we heard, so I'll just throw it over to the committee now. Do you have any questions or points of clarification you want to ask for either the objectors or the applicant? No? Okay, all right. Andrew, do you need to sum up?
I don't think so.
Thank you very much. Very good. Can we then move into the debate? So there's I need a proposal to either approve, reject, etc., the variation. So could I have a proposer? Go on. Oh, yes. Thank you very much. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to propose that we grant this application.
Yep. And a seconder, Councillor Tyson was scratching his head, so it's Ruth. Yes, Councillor Brown.
I'm happy to second, reserve my right to speak.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Colleagues, any debate? Nobody is indicating a desire to debate this item. Going once, twice. Please may we have a vote on approving the variation, James?
Yeah, that motion is carried.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And before colleagues get too excited, there is one final agenda item, which is agenda item number 9. Very brief. This is an update on planning appeals. Sean.
Chair, listed at the end of the report is an appeal that has been lodged. It's a modest proposal. Got nothing. It's householder basically. I was asked. I did mention last time, and Councillor Brown did ask for me to update you on the application on site allocation BA4 at Respring, which was which committee resolved to refuse planning permission for, contrary to officer recommendation. The applicant has lodged an appeal and has asked for that to be by public inquiry. We have responded saying that we feel that a hearing is more appropriate, and it's now with the planning inspectorate for them to determine on the procedure. They will take some time, I suspect, to come to a view, as they usually do on these matters, and I'll inform you at the next meetings as to what the outcome of that will be, and I will perhaps produce a note for circulation of members to explain the situation going forward.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Sean? Nope. Thank you very much. That was very helpful. Right. That was a report for noting, so I don't think that we need to vote on it. No, we don't. Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you ever so much, colleagues. And I will see the majority of you next week.